Chapter 320. Some people are shallow, some are golden on the outside, but rotten on the inside. One day, you will meet a person as gorgeous as the rainbow, and when you meet this person, you will feel that others are just floating clouds. Ronassa leaned against the window, looking at the blue sea outside. List's words seemed to be echoing in his ears when they were the height of their love. When you are happy, love reaches the depths of your soul. But when you wake up in the morning, you will find that your side is empty, leaving only some messy bedding. Brother Roger said, "Never fall in love." Lady Penelope said it was time to forget oneself for someone at least once. She did what Lady Penelope said, very simply, let go of the constraints and enjoy. But she found that it was difficult to do what her brother said, never fall in love. Do you want to tell me that you are a person who is golden on the outside, but rotten on the inside? She gently waved her hand and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. But how do you know why you are not a person as gorgeous as the rainbow? Do you know how many nobles have pursued me on Golden Island? But after I met you, those people have become floating clouds. She bit her lower lip. She raised her head and tried to appear calm. Unfortunately, I was born on Golden Island, a woman of the Golden Wheat family, and you are just a country baron. Even if you have a great future, you are still weak. Thank you for giving me an unforgettable moment of joy. I look forward to seeing you next time, List. The sea breeze whistled. The ship sailed into the vast blue sea. Tulip Castle. List stayed in the piano room, not typing for a long time, until Vera came in. Why are you hiding in the piano room, but not playing the piano? I saw that your retainer knight and your dog did not leave. It's strange. You usually don't want to stay in Tulip Castle. Is it because of the beautiful and charming Miss Ronassa, my affectionate and cruel brother? Cruel? List asked lightly. Isn't it cruel to not have a farewell greeting? Isn't it cruel to quietly leave her room? Isn't it cruel to take away a girl's most precious thing without giving anything in return? You saw everything. Lavera smiled proudly. Nonsense. There are so many servants in Tulip Castle. They are all my informants. Do you think that after I was in theft, this place became Madame Marie's territory? Impossible. List could not deny it. To be honest, this was the Earl's territory now. In the future, it would be Levis's territory. It really had nothing to do with Lavera. I can't help but admire you, List. You've become a socialite killer. In Longtaro Castle, you slept with Dunico Hyacinth and didn't even leave a fart behind. In Tulip Castle, you slept with Rona Golden Wheat and similarly patted your butt, not even willing to send a fart. Don't always say such an inelegant word like fart. List found that Lavera had become a Chinibi girl again, and his mood was not very good. It was probably because he was a scumbag. He was panting and unable to accept it. But the development of things was beyond his expectations. He really just wanted to help Levis, please Rona Golden Wheat, and leave a good impression on her. He didn't want to urge her sister to seek freedom and happiness, and just be the future mistress of Tulip Castle. However, from the moment he stumbled, things had already gotten out of hand. Not to mention the impulse after 12 o'clock. Actually, he really wanted to find someone to talk to, and Lavera was barely suitable. I originally planned to give her a newly composed piano piece and tell her a story about Sky City when we parted. But time was limited. Who would have thought that Roger would leave after breakfast? Maybe he was afraid that you would make his sister fall. Lavera's tone was a little gentle. In the eyes of the Golden Wheat family, women are just props for networking. Since they have already made friends with Coral Island through Rona Golden Wheat family, they will naturally not leave another one. By the way, what's the story about Sky City? Coaxing a little girl, you won't like to hear it. What about the piano piece? You can even compose a piano piece. Quickly play it for me. Liz stood up and left the grand piano. I find that you are really leisurely. Sorry, I have no inspiration and can't play anything. Let's talk about it next time. It is indeed getting late. I should go back to the flower town. For a night, I have not been practicing seriously for the past 2 days. List shook off the somewhat angry Olvera. List was entangled by Levis, who had just returned from seeing him off. List, are you still my brother? I worship you from the bottom of my heart. You really succeeded in getting Rona Golden Wheat family. Do you know how ugly Roger's face was when he left in the morning? It was so cool. Roger is angry, yet you're happy. Are you not afraid that he will destroy your marriage with Rona Golden Wheat family? He is not an ignorant little girl like Rona Golden Wheat family. No matter how angry he is, he will not stop the marriage alliance between the Golden Island and the Coral Island. Besides, you got Rona Golden Wheat family by relying on your own ability. You and I were willing. Who could find fault with you? Levis said indifferently, I really envy you for having such a handsome face. List had an ordinary appearance. Even though he relied on his status as the Count's eldest son, he still repeatedly ran into a wall. After all, not every aristocratic young lady would be dizzy and be attracted by the title of Countess. Instead, handsome aristocrats like Liszt were more popular. They did not seek everlasting love, only a moment of pleasure. Handsome people also have handsome troubles. Liszt did not want to talk about this topic. He was unwilling to admit that he had become a member of the countless dissolute aristocrats. He felt that he had feelings in his heart. After making love with Dunico, if the other party asked him to stay, he was even willing to marry her, not minding any past. After making love with Rona Golden Wheat family, he excitedly prepared to play the piano, but in the end, he could only sit facing the air. Perhaps this was the true face of aristocracy, the separation of desires and interests. Everyone sacrificed or indulged for the sake of interests. Therefore, after careful consideration, he still felt that he should move his eyes away from love and earnestly prepare for the great undertaking of dragon riding, striving to become the lord of the dragon field. By the way, big brother, when are you and Rolia going to get married? From the moment you got Rona Golden Wheat family, there was no longer any barrier between me and Rolia. Our wedding will be held in September of this year, said Levis excitedly. Liszt nodded and said, Then you should put your mind at ease and manage this marriage seriously. Marriage naturally needs to be managed seriously. This matter concerns the future development of the Coral Island and must be treated with caution. However, it does not hinder the joy outside of marriage. Levis blinked his eyes. Next week, there will be an underground ball held in Snake Spear City. I will take you there to experience it. No, I want to go home. After a night of indulgence without responsibility, he needed time to recover from the damage to his mind. How could he participate in a licentious party? The sound of hooves was urgent. The flower town was in sight. Chapter 321. Quinn's Tower Conjecture. In a town called Quinn in the Grand Duchy of Brass, the decaying corpse of a Tauren was found. Is there really such a creature as a Tauren? Liszt casually flipped through a few of the magic books brought by Elksun and happily paid for them. In order to encourage Elksun to choose useful books for him, he adopted the practice of buying ordinary worthless books by the box and valuable books by the book. Among this batch of books, there were a few that were really good. So, he paid a total of 7 gold coins. He would spend a dozen or 20 gold coins just to read books every month. Now that he has money, he doesn't care about this expense. It's like subscribing to a few newspapers on Earth. He doesn't read most of the magic books because it's really of no value. Just like now, he doesn't want to read most of the night novels. His taste has been spoiled by a strange story. Moreover, Dragons Raging in the Wild has stopped updating indefinitely, and even the interest in searching for information has disappeared. There are more and more books on the bookshelves, but fewer and fewer books are being read. On the contrary, the siren A Chi was reading with relish. Those boring magic experiment notes, in her eyes, were as tempting as gold and silver jewelry. The innocent little siren was about to become a bookworm. In order to avoid such a thing, he played the piano and often took her out to sea and discussed magic with her so that she wouldn't be bored. Big brother, Achi has learned a new spell. Look. She stretched out her hand, and a water ball immediately condensed. She aimed at the window and shot it out, exploding in midair. This is a water bullet. The principle is similar to water arrow, but is much more powerful and consumes less magic power. Oh, Liszt had long been shocked by her magic talent, so he nodded plainly and said, Continue to work hard and strive to be a great magician. Well, Achi will work hard. Every time he talked to a Qi, it was like a psychological counseling, and all negative emotions could be cured. Let him forget the mess of desire, interest, passion, and resolution that took place in the castle with a name. He brewed a cup of biluakan. It was tea brewed from the leaves of the green tea tree. Because the leaves were a little curly, it was named biluakan. Qi, come and have a taste of my tea art. This is a new drink. In this world, apart from me, I'm afraid you're the only one who can drink it. Thank you, big brother. Qi picked up the transparent crystal teacup and took a sip. Suddenly, her expression changed. Brother, it's so bitter. Qi doesn't like it. Sweetness comes after bitterness. Taste it again, and you'll notice that the fragrance of the tea lingers in your mouth. However, Qi drank another 2 mouthfuls and still complained of bitterness. It doesn't taste good. Brother, Qi doesn't want tea. Qi likes fruit juice. All right. List regretted that his first attempt to share tea ended in failure. He didn't mind Qi's saliva and drank the remaining half of the tea. With 3 tea trees, he couldn't even afford to drink a cup of tea a day, so he could only save and save. Qi floated on the surface of the shell again, reading the book carefully. Even the chaos of the world could not disturb her. He put down the teacup. List walked to the piano. His heart suddenly fluctuated, as if a swan rose and danced on the lake of his heart. Then, another swan flew over and danced with it. Then, 2 more swans flew over and danced together. He recalled the feeling in his mind, and his hands unconsciously tapped on the keyboard, moving rhythmically. One note after another bloomed and rose from the upright piano, like bright red roses blooming, forming 4 dancing swans. Qi closed the book in her hand and looked at List in surprise. List was unconsciously immersed in the piano performance. 4 swans danced around him. They were composed of rhythmic notes. Suddenly, a swan screamed miserably, broke its wings, and fell on the piano. Blood dyed the keys red, as if List was playing with blood. Then, the other swan screamed and broke its wings. Blood dyed the entire piano red. The last 2 swans flew away in horror, one to the left and the other to the right, leaving the bright red piano and the owner of the piano, List, still plucking the keys, letting the notes dance with blood. The swans died, flew, and everything turned into nothingness. The room was still the worm room. Ella was dozing. Qi listened with her head tilted. Only List sat in front of the upright piano, playing the black and white keys gracefully, his fingers like 10 elves jumping, until the end of the last note. List quickly grabbed the paper and pen on the piano, dipped them in ink, and used the most abstract and scribbled marks to record all the melodies in his mind. Just 3 pages. In a moment, it was full, comparing the melody that was still lingering in his ears and correcting a few wrong notes. He finally recorded the new piece. With a pen in the blank space, he wrote Saint-Saëns Swan Piano Solo as the title. In 19th century Paris, France, there was a musician, Saint-Saëns, who was not very famous later, who created the Symphony Carnival of the Animals for fun. Because many of the tunes were malicious changes of other people's tunes without permission, it was never published. Only one of the swan was performed in public, but it became a masterpiece of Saint-Saëns and a classic, describing the graceful and noble posture of the swan swimming in the water, her lonely but very holy figure. List didn't know why. Inspiration suddenly broke out, and without relying on the smoke task, he recalled the melody. After thinking about it, he crossed out the Saint-Saëns snake text and wrote a new title list, Swan Piano Solo, and solemnly included it in his piano score. Before that, he already had 2 piano pieces, List with You and List to Alice re-edit. To Alice had the background story written by someone else, so it could not be directly used as a composition. It could only be included in the name of revision and compilation. If I'm not careful, I'll become a piano master. The day after his return, the flowers also returned and brought good news. The main body of the lighthouse had been completed and the crystal lamps could be started. The crystal lamps were specially made, using a magic array to guide the magic in the crystal and release it in the form of light. Unfortunately, The light of the crystal lamps was not very bright. It was difficult to guarantee that it could illuminate 2 or 3 kilometers away. When they arrived at Black Horse Port, Jemiah rammed Earth, who was whipped so hard that he could not walk, could already limp to the ground with a cane. "Sir Lord, rubber is amazing. Using rubber water to mix the sand and stones. The speed of building the lighthouse is far beyond expectations, and the degree of solidity after solidification is similar to glutinous rice juice. Coupled with the gray bricks you guided the firing, it greatly saved the time of selecting materials for the lighthouse, so we built it in 5 days." He pointed to the 10-meter-high lighthouse at the head of the rocky beach with a hint of pride. He used to live in the shadow of his teacher Mbappe, but now he could finally build it independently. The lighthouse was not big, not tall, and not thick. The lower half was mainly made of rocks, while the upper half was mainly made of bricks. The lines between the stones and bricks were not neat, but the structure was complete. "Teacher Marcus, I will leave this crystal lamp to you. When the flower needs to return at night, you send someone to light it on the lighthouse. If there is no need for navigation, take it down." "Understood, sir." The lighthouse was now completed. Liz quickly began to check the smoke task. Chapter 322. This chapter is Cherry Blossom in Autumn. The Secret of the Sea Snake Monster. It's not a book about powerful magic, but a popular science book about water monsters. He was just about to sigh when he was rewarded with an insignificant book. Suddenly, he found that the name of the magic book had the words Sea Snake Monster, and his heart skipped a beat. The sea snake monster immediately reminded him of the 6-headed giant sea snake monster that chased after the siren Chi. Then he remembered the invisible dragon chain quest, which was also involved in the form of a magic book. At this moment, he had a strong premonition that the crisis had been around him. Perhaps this time, it is the chain quest of Guru Mida. The Guru Mida, which is likely to be a mid-level sea monster, has never left this area, hiding in the dark and spying on us. Very likely. Otherwise, there is no need to reward him with a sea snake science book. However, in the face of the threat of Guru Mida, he was only nervous for a moment and then relaxed. The invasion of the invisible dragon has been dealt with. So what if there is another mid-level sea monster? With the help of the smoke mission, it will not be too difficult to deal with this sea snake. The power of fate is not ordinary. Moreover, sea monsters can only live in the deep sea. If it dares to come to the shallow sea area, it is courting death. Today's Flower Town, today's list, is no longer weak. Be careful for a while, hurry to complete more smoke missions, get more information about Guru Mida and the chain quest rewards. Finally, solve the hidden dangers. Thoughts flashed. A new smoke mission was issued. Mission: look through the magic books brought by Elkson. Do you feel that every book is contaminated with the screams of the magic apprentices? It is the helplessness and despair after the soul is broken. Please wash away the grievances in the magic books. Reward: a research notebook. The grievances of the magic apprentices? Liz frowned and thought, what does this mean? Could it be that Elkson killed a lot of magic apprentices in order to get these magic books? Elkson doesn't look like a homicidal maniac, and killing magic apprentices can get magic books. His intuition told him that Elkson would not kill a magic apprentice. But reason tells him that it is necessary to carefully examine Elkson and not to trust anyone. If Elkson is really a homicidal maniac, then I have to kill Elkson if I want to wash away the grievances in the books. Let's go back to Flower Town first, and then plan the next step. On the Coral Island, it was strictly forbidden to kill people at will. This was a rule issued by the Count. Even the nobles were not allowed to kill people at will outside their territory. Even if it was within their territory, killing people at will would be punished by the Count. Although the Lord had absolute jurisdiction over the territory, if one's behavior exceeded the morals of the nobles, the superior lord would naturally teach one a lesson. Of course, aristocrats usually cherished their serfs very much and wouldn't kill them at will. The superior lords also wouldn't interfere with what their followers did in their territory. There was no need to quarrel with his followers over the lives of a few civilians. However, magicians were not nobles. If they dared to kill people, the nobles would definitely punish them. List appreciated Elksun very much. He was polite, not rigid, and a good partner to work with. But as a noble, if he finds out that Elksun killed people at will, he will never be soft. He rested for the night. The next day, he took a boat back to Flower Town. During the voyage, List was no longer bored as he used to be. Gort, who returned with the ship, was always bragging. He kept looking around with his binoculars to make sure that Grimida didn't sneak up on him. On the sea, mid-level sea monsters were not easy to deal with. He was ready to not resist in case he encountered Grimida. He stopped the ship and took back the calm pearl. He let Grimida wreak havoc and just hid in the wooden boat to survive. And he was covered with smoked grass juice, waiting for Grimida to finish wreaking havoc before rowing home. This was not cowardice. This was helplessness. He had to return to Flower Town, but without preparation, he would encounter Grimida in the vast sea. Resistance would only lead to a quick death. However, without the siren Chi on board, Grimida may not be interested in the flowers. During this time, he had sailed back and forth dozens of times and had not bumped into Grimida. It could be seen that the sea monster had little interest in ships. In the tension, he returned to Flower Town smoothly. List went straight to the castle and rummaged through the magic books brought by Elksun. Some of the magic books he determined had no harmful content were given to the siren Chi to read, and some were left in the bookshelf in the study. During this time, I only received 2 boxes of books from Elksun, and the reward should be in there. Quickly rummaged, and soon, a book called The Secrets of Sea Snake Water Monsters was turned out from the inconspicuous corner of the bookshelf. He hadn't seen this book before. Probably the butler Carter helped him sort it out and put it on the bookshelf. Before he was ready to read it, he called the guard Paris. "Lord Baron, what can I do for you? It's a small task. I hope you can help me complete it. I like magic books, you know." Of course, everyone in the town should know that Lord Baron likes to read. These books were purchased for me by Elksun Truth, but I now suspect that there are some problems with the origin of these books. I want you to help me secretly investigate to make sure that they were purchased in a legal way. List said he didn't want to interrogate Elksun directly. First, he didn't want to alert the enemy, and second, if it was a misunderstanding, it wouldn't look good. It's a very easy task. I will complete it as soon as possible, Lord Baron. Then let's talk about the reward for the task. Paris suddenly smiled. It's just a small task, it's free. After all, I just take the money and don't work, which has caused a lot of gossip among the officials in the town. Gossip? List raised his eyebrows. It seemed that someone was not very satisfied with his salary arrangement. I will put an end to this kind of gossip. No, Lord Baron, I don't mind it. After Paris finished speaking, she bid farewell and left in a carefree manner to carry out the free mission. List did not forget what she had said and directly called the butler Carter. "Mr. Carter, do you know that someone in the town complained that Paris's salary was too high?" "Sorry, master. I don't seem to have noticed this." "You tell the servants not to forget to ask more about what the town officials said when they go out. If there is any discordant content, tell me quickly." "Yes, master." After instructing the butler Carter, List planned to investigate slowly. When he was alone in the study, he picked up the milk tea on the table, and his face quickly became gloomy. Chapter 323. This chapter is Bitter Tree, 20,000 coins reward, and there is another chapter after that. The relationship between the Lord and the follower is also a game. If the Lord is strong, the follower will be self-disciplined and loyal. If the Lord is weak, the follower will be presumptuous and evasive. The pattern of Red Crab Island is that the Lord is weak and the followers are restless. Therefore, List has been learning how to be a qualified Lord. If he stayed on Coral Island all his life, he would not need to learn anything. With the protection of his family, his followers would not dare to be presumptuous. But his ambition is not Flower Town or a small island like Black Horse Island. Count and Marquis are not his goal. His goal is at least the title of Grand Duke, to ride a dragon. The future is bright and the road is tortuous. Every step now is planning for the future and laying a solid foundation. So, the gossip behind Paris's salary was just a small breakthrough for him to try to control his followers. After thinking for a moment, he calmed down. There are more important things waiting for him to deal with. Sea snake, a type of venomous snake that lives in the sea and has colorful patterns on its body. Sea snakes are found in shallow water areas, but sea snake monsters have not been found many times, and most of them are found in the deep sea, or should be called sea snake sea monsters. Water monster, sea monster, they all mean the same thing. There is no such thing as an officially recognized official name or an internationally accepted academic name in this world. Each region has a different name for the species. The author of The Secrets of Sea Snake Water Monsters is the court mage of Star Duchy. Star Duchy is near the sea, and the author studies water magic, so he often goes out to sea by boat to find sea monsters. This popular science book mainly introduces sea snakes and sea monsters. A total of 7 kinds of sea snakes and sea monsters are recorded. There were 5 low-level sea monsters: the rainbow sea snake, the blue ring sea snake, the ice ring sea snake, the red ring sea snake, and the double-headed sea snake. There were also 2 mid-level sea monsters, the 6-headed sea snake and the frost king sea snake. Every type of sea snake was introduced in terms of toxicity, magic, size, and other data. Of course, the data is not comprehensive because the number of observations is very few and the research conditions are limited. What attracted List's attention was the introduction of the 6-headed king hydra. The 6-headed king hydra is more powerful than the frozen hydra king. I've observed it twice. The first time was an adult 6-headed king hydra with a body length of more than 12 meters. The second time was a juvenile 6-headed king hydra with a body length of 6 meters and 3 heads that couldn't release magic. This great magician's data was very solid, and he had even hand-drawn illustrations. The somewhat abstract 6-headed sea serpent king had a very thick body, about 2/3 of its body length, and the remaining 1/3 was made up of 6 slender snake heads. There were gorgeous patterns, mainly black and white. The 6 snake heads were capable of releasing water arrow volley, water wave shield, water whirlpool, powerful water pillar, water blade, and water waterfall respectively. The 6-headed king hydra is similar to the 2-headed hydra. According to my speculation, for every 2 meters it grows, a snake head will mature and release magic. The 6-headed sea serpent king feeds on fish, dolphins, and humans who fall into the water, but it won't take the initiative to attack ships. If it is angered, it will release magic crazily for more than half an hour. I found that the 6 heads of the adult 6-headed sea serpent king hydra have the same thinking and release magic in a very orderly manner. However, the juvenile 6-headed sea serpent king hydra's thinking is not consistent, and it is easy to be distracted, resulting in failure to cast spells and change targets. Because he hadn't caught the 6-headed sea serpent king, the great magician didn't record more data. In his magic book, he didn't mainly record the attributes of sea serpents and sea monsters, but a secret about sea serpents: the amazing reaction between the snake blood fruit and the blood of sea serpents and sea monsters. According to the book, the snake blood fruit is a kind of medicinal material that can be eaten as a fruit, although it tastes terrible. Poisonous snakes like to eat the snake blood fruit, so there must be snake blood fruit around them. When a hunter is bitten by a snake, he will immediately look for the snake blood fruit around to detoxify it. Children with diarrhea and pregnant women with dystocia can all be treated by eating the snake blood fruit. In the Myriad Stars Principality, the snake blood fruit was very famous. Because a large number of poisonous snakes live there, the lords had to grow a large number of snake blood fruits in order to treat snake venom at any time. At first, the great magician just wanted to study the relationship between the snake blood fruit and snake venom in order to formulate an antidote to make money. However, after using snake blood to cultivate the snake blood fruit, he found that the snake blood fruit grew very vigorously. He then began to catch all kinds of snakes and release snake blood to feed the snake blood fruit. Until one time, when he used the blood of the sea serpent monster, he suddenly found that there was a problem with the snake blood fruit. It unexpectedly gave birth to a snake blood fruit sprite worm. After repeated exploration, He spent God knows how much money to buy the sea serpent monster. He finally concluded that the blood of the low-level sea serpent monster had a small probability of stimulating the snake blood fruit to give birth to a sprite worm. The blood of the mid-level sea serpent monster had not been tested, so he didn't know what the probability was. This should have been a world-shaking discovery. By relying on such a discovery, he could definitely breed a large number of snake blood fruit sprite worms to make money. However, when someone did the math for him, he was left speechless. 20 low-level sea serpents could probably nurture a sprite worm. On average, the price of buying a sea serpent monster was 160 gold coins. Low-level World of Warcraft certainly couldn't reach this price. However, sea serpents were difficult to catch, so the price was generally high. In other words, he had to spend 3,200 gold coins to breed a snake blood fruit sprite worm. However, at the local market price, a snake blood fruit sprite worm only cost 2,000 gold coins. Relying on sea snakes and sea monsters to nurture a snake blood fruit sprite worm would result in a huge loss. The great magician angrily shelved his money-making plans. He wrote his findings in the book Secrets of Sea Serpent Monsters and published it for sale. He believed that it was still meaningful for him to at least find a way to breed a sprite worm. Therefore, List raised his head from the book and muttered, "The Gyramita chasing a chi might just be an underage six-headed sea serpent king with 4 heads capable of magic and a body length of about 8 meters. Moreover, snakes like to eat snake blood fruits. Maybe I can use snake blood fruits to attract the 6-headed sea serpent king, or interfere with the casting of the 4 heads." List closed the magic book. He knew that snake blood fruits were the focus of hunting the Gyramita. He needed to buy a batch of snake blood fruits. However, it seemed that there were no snake blood fruits on the Coral Island. At least, it was the first time he had heard of such a fruit. According to the great magician's records, the blood of sea serpents can give birth to snake blood fruit sprite worms. If I dig into the principle, I may be able to crack the secret of sprite worm breeding. Unfortunately, List didn't have the ability to dig into the secret for the time being. He also didn't have any wizards under him who could do research. If I kill the Gyramita, its blood may be used to breed snake blood fruits. Maybe I can successfully breed a snake blood fruit sprite worm in one go. However, the risk is not small. It is better to directly sell the blood of mid-level sea serpents. Maybe I can sell it for a better price. The materials on a low-level World of Warcraft range from a dozen gold coins to several hundred gold coins. The materials on a mid-level World of Warcraft were at least 10 times that of a low-level World of Warcraft. It would not be difficult to sell it for several hundred gold coins. Rather than wasting snake blood on snake blood fruits, it was better to sell it for gold coins. Chapter 324. The matter of the snake blood fruit was entrusted to his caravan and Tulip Castle's caravan. He also wrote to Aubrey Whitegrass of Beer Castle and asked the other party to also inquire about the snake blood fruit and buy a batch. After doing all this, he waited for news of the snake blood fruit, waited for the results of Paris's investigation, and thought about how to hunt Gyramita. Gyramita is chasing the siren, which means that a chi is the best bait, but I can't let a chi get hurt, so luring Gyramita in the sea is not advisable. Not in the sea, only on the shore. To accurately lure Gyramita, a chi's identity as a siren was indispensable. In List's mind, a chi was very important. He must ensure the safety of the siren. Maybe I can lure Gyramita on the shore, but how do I lure it on the shore? Or rather, how does Gyramita pursue the siren, a chi? What does it rely on to track it? He went into the worm room. He asked a chi. A chi tilted her head and thought for a moment. She replied, "Brother, a chi is not very clear. In the sea, I can't get rid of Gyramita. Maybe it's based on a chi's scent in the sea. Just as a hound can track its prey by the smell of the air, maybe Gyramita can also track a chi through the sea. It could basically be determined that Gyramita was using this method to track. Achi, I'm going to hunt Gyramita," List said. "This may require your cooperation to lure Gyramita out of the sea. Brother, can you defeat Gyramita?" Although Achi didn't mean to despise him, This question still hurt List's self-esteem. He couldn't help but raise his voice. As long as we are well prepared, it's just a mid-level sea monster. Killing it is as easy as flipping a hand. Ah, brother, you're amazing. Achi clapped her hands. Brother, what should Achi do? Should I go directly into the sea to lure it? It's too dangerous to go into the sea. Although I need to use you to lure Giramikta, but your safety is the most important thing. List rubbed Achi's blue hair. I plan to widen a river by the sea around Flower Town. You will wade upstream of the river and lure Giramikta into the river. The sea was the home of the sea monsters. It was impossible for List to defeat a mid-level sea monster at sea, even if it was an underage mid-level sea monster. Therefore, luring Grumikita ashore was the most important step. However, he suddenly remembered that he seemed to have read in Man and Nature that sea snakes could come ashore. The documentary had explained that sea snakes laid eggs on the beach. In other words, it was possible that Grumikita could move freely on the shore. After all, a sea snake was still a snake, and all snakes could crawl. But on second thought, sea monsters lived in the deep sea. Logically speaking, they had already adapted to living in the deep sea, so their movements on the shore would definitely be greatly restricted. So no matter what, he had to lure Grumble Mikita ashore. He took out a pen and paper and drew a sketch on the table. He simply sketched the coastline and river channels. He circled around the upper reaches of the river. Achi, this is your position. When Tulamikita swims over, I will cut off its escape route from here. I'll get Dosen to release rock thorns around this area and cover it with densely packed solid rock thorns to restrict Grumikita's movements. List explained to Achi. While scribbling, he revised the hunting plan. Tulamikita is about 8 meters long and has a short and thick body. According to the ratio, its body diameter can exceed 40 centimeters, so the distance between the rock thorns needs to be less than 40 centimeters. Rock thorns are just obstacles for sea monsters, and more restraints are needed. You can prepare a boat net. Pictures and words were densely packed together. It made the plan look good. However, whether it was rock thorns, boat nets, or blocked waterways, they were just ordinary obstacles. They could limit Tulamikita's movements, but they couldn't hurt it. List didn't think that he, Marcus, Griffin, Russell, Londo, Rick, and Paris, the 7 Earth Knights, could easily kill an intermediate sea monster in front of Tulamikita, who knew 4 kinds of water magic. If Paris transformed into a black dragon, she should be able to, but once she transformed into a battle, I'm afraid she would face death. List was not willing to exchange her life for the life of Tulamikita. Not to mention that Paris was an important personal guarantee for him to go to the battlefield in the future. Just getting along with her for so many days, he couldn't sacrifice her indifferently. Perhaps seeing List frown, Achi suddenly said, Brother, Achi is a magician. Achi can also join the battle. You don't have to fight. When you become a great magician, I will be willing to fight for you. Now study magic. List smiled and refused. Paris couldn't fight desperately, but she could be a safety lock to hunt Tulamikita. In case the hunting operation failed, Paris could save himself and the siren Achi as bait in a critical moment. A short transformation would not reduce her lifespan. In other words, hunting Tulamikita would be risky for List, but it would not involve his life. He needed to focus on how to deal a heavy blow to Tulamikita. Wow! Ella, who had woken up from her sleep, ran to lie on List's hair and disturb his thoughts. But it also brought him new inspiration. He could let Ella plant some thorns on Tulamikita. He thought about it for fear that it would be frightened by Tulamikita's magic and would kneel down. Back then, Trembling Wood's rock grenade scared Jayla. By the way, the little elf is useless, but I have a dragon. His eyes suddenly lit up. I almost forgot that I have fire dragon magic. If I concentrate all the fire dragon magic, I should be able to form a fire dragon that covers a range of tens of meters. With the power of the fire dragon, it can burn Tulamikita alive from the inside out. The magic fire dragon's movement speed was not fast. First of all, the actions of Tulamikita must be limited. How to limit it? There were already rock thorns, boat nets, blocking waterways, and other methods. He quickly added, you can use rubber water, dump a lot of rubber into the river, and turn the river into rubber water. With rock thorns, boat nets, and sand, Tulamakita should be stuck in a few minutes, completely immobilized, and let the fire dragon burn it. Movement must be limited, and the next step must be to limit Tulamakita's magic. This probably needs to rely on the temptation of the snake blood fruit to interfere with its four heads and disorient the thinking of the four heads. By the way, the smoke mission that Paris is performing seems to be a research notebook. Will it record how to restrain Tulamakita? For 2 whole hours, he stayed in the worm room, revising the hunting plan back and forth, and basically planned the general process. He confidently gave the plan a code name, Operation Snake Beheading. In ancient times, there was Liu Bang's snake beheading uprising. Today, there is List beheading the snake. Beheading the snake. Beheading the snake. Achi saw List frown and couldn't help but ask curiously, Brother, have you thought of a way to kill Tulamakita? Chapter 325. The existence of Murumida was a threat, and threats should be dealt with as soon as possible. Therefore, after List planned the snake-slaying operation, he rode Black Dragon and galloped to the northern periphery of the Thorns Ridge. He remembered that there was a small river here. The river meandered and was surrounded by bushes. The terrain was not complicated, but there were also ups and downs. List looked carefully and had a rough sketch of the river layout. This was not part of Flower Town, but it was surrounded by wastelands, so there was no need to greet anyone. He directly called Gort, I need you to gather the serfs and widen the river to 2 meters deep, knee-deep. Sir, why are you digging this river? It doesn't seem to be in Flower Town. I'm going to hunt mid-level sea monsters in this river. What? Mid-level sea monster. In the waters near Flower Town, there's a mid-level sea monster, probably a 6-headed sea serpent king. List released the news. Gort was startled. Mid-level sea monster? 6-headed sea serpent king? Sir, this... You don't have to be nervous. You don't have to hunt it. I will deal with it myself. You just need to follow my instructions and set up traps here. Gort looked at List's calm appearance and could not help but dissuade. Sir, you need to be careful. Mid-level sea monsters are as powerful as mid-level World of Warcraft. The purple sand crocodiles on Coral Island. Even the Count is unwilling to eliminate them. As for this 6-headed sea serpent king, you should be even more cautious. Let the 6-headed sea serpent king ravage the waters of Flower Town. It will attack the flowers at any time, cutting off the connection between Flower Town and Black Horse Island. We'll be threatened by it if we don't hunt it down. Seeing that Gort was about to say something, List interrupted him directly. I know what you are worried about. I will be fully prepared to hunt the 6-headed sea serpent king. If things don't work out, I will report to my father and leave it to him to deal with. Sir, I think you should report to the Count now. After all, let me try first. I'll give up if I can't beat him. Asking for help from the Count was indeed a solution, but the Count might not be able to deal with Murmurmida. In case the hunt is successful, all the gains will inevitably fall into the Count's pocket, and there is also the risk of exposing the Siren Chi. Not to mention now, even without any external assistance, he was confident that with the Flower Town's current strength, he could try to hunt it down. Coupled with the Smoke Mission's chain mission reward, he was still very confident. At worst, if he failed, he would go to the Count for help. Once he had made up his mind, he didn't waver and directly ordered Gort. The news about the mid-level sea monster can only be spread among the town's officials. Don't leak any information. As for the excavation of the river, you and Isaiah can discuss it under other names. You must complete the construction as soon as possible. There was nothing he could do. Gort could only accept the order. As you wish, my lord. Soon, the news spread among the Flower Town's officials. At the luncheon, a heated discussion ensued. List only explained his decision at the beginning, then sat in his chair and watched coldly. Hizzle was unshakable. The rest was up to the officials to make a choice. They could have opinions, they could object loudly, but when he made the final decision, no one was allowed to be negative. Like the gossip in the investigation, List hoped to make His Majesty deeply rooted in the hearts of the people through several political actions. He had a great future, but there was a long way to go to train a group of qualified followers in night squads. When the quarrel ended, List, who was full, slowly said, "You can keep your opinions," but he looked around and saw that no one made a sound. He was very satisfied with the current atmosphere. "I have decided to hunt the six-headed sea serpent king. What you need to do is to cooperate and put forward additional opinions to improve the hunting plan. I have handed over the information of the six-headed sea serpent king to Advisor Gort. You go to the administrative office for a meeting to discuss and report back in the evening." After the luncheon, List was still in the mood to take a nap. Paris, who had just woken up from her nap and went out to investigate magic books, came back. "Fortunately, I did not fail," she said easily. "I have found out about the magic books. There is no problem with Elksun. The problem is with another mage he cooperated with to buy the books, Mylisai Truth." Mylisai Truth? List had never heard of the name. She lives in a small town not far from Coral City. She has lived in seclusion for many years and is in contact with some mages on the Outer Islands. Her magic books are all purchased through mages on the Outer Islands. What is not normal is the way she treats magic apprentices. While I went to investigate, I happened to meet her. Paris frowned, a disgusted expression on her face. She skinned her magic apprentices alive and did research while skinning them. Then, she spread out her hands. I almost killed her. After interrogating her, I found out that she had used different methods to kill hundreds of magic apprentices. So, I couldn't hold back and twisted her arms, and then, "I'm sorry, Lord Baron, she died from excessive blood loss." Listening to Paris, List was also shocked. He had actually killed hundreds of magic apprentices by skinning them. This kind of mage was really cruel, no less than Curtis Truth from the Spectre ship. No wonder even the smoke mission was triggered. So he just said lightly, "Don't kill people, it will next time." This time, since it was an accident that caused death, and it was a person who deserved to die, forget it. Did she leave any books or research notes? I knew you would need these things, so I packed them all and brought them back. There is also a mess of casting materials, and there seems to be a few pieces of magic equipment. Counting the carriages, there were a total of 6 pieces of magic equipment, some of which were magic equipment for amplification and protection. List gave half of it to Paris and the other half to himself. Here are 3 pieces of magic equipment for protection. You take them as a reward for completing the quest. I'll keep the magic equipment. He was going to give the magic equipment to a Chi so that she could be armed. Paris accepted the 3 pieces of magic equipment without hesitation. "Thank you. I will give them to Maggie for protection." He ordered the servants to move the remaining large pile of casting materials to the warehouse, and then move the magic books and experimental notes collected by Mylisai to the study. He said to Paris, who was about to leave, "I have a plan to hunt the intermediate sea monster, the six-headed King Hydra. I hope you can participate in the hunt. In case the hunt fails, protect me." "This is my job, Lord Baron." Paris smiled. She had recently returned to the free and easy look she had when she first came to Flower Town. "But you're really bold. You even dare to hunt intermediate sea monsters. Isn't it good to enjoy life?" List touched the red blood sword at his waist. "There are some things you have to do. The six-headed King Hydra has threatened the development of my territory and the safety of my subjects. I must get rid of this threat." The 6th chapter was delivered. The last 2 hours of the last day. "Everyone, do you have a monthly ticket?" At present, White was in the 7th place on the monthly ticket list, less than 300 votes away from the 1st place. The 6th place had a prize of 5,000 yuan, which was very important to White. I wonder if anyone can lend Lao by a helping hand. Chapter 326. Whether it was for the reward of the smoke mission or for the safety of Flower Town and Black Horse Island route, Murumida must die. After Paris left, List directly summoned the smoke mission. Complete the mission. Reward: Mylisai Truth's research notes. The notes he brought back from Mylisai's cabin in the woods were the reward for the smoke mission. The real content of the rewards needed to be found by List himself. He returned to the study and looked at the new smoke mission before opening the notes. Mission: recently, many foreign civilians have chosen to settle in Flower Town. It can be seen that the charm of Flower Town has bloomed on Coral Island, but the increase in foreign personnel has also brought risks. Please find out the 3 hidden rats. Reward: the attack of the 6-headed king sea snake. Well, List was surprised. This chain mission has only been completed for 2 rounds, and now it's time for the decisive battle? I feel that the mission reward is a bit small, and the sense of security is not enough. The Thorn Sprite Ella's chain mission was the longest. There were a total of 6 smoke missions before Ella was born. The Invisible Dragon chain mission, including the final harvest of space gems, was also 6 smoke missions. However, List was soon relieved. The first 2 rounds of the mission, plus this one, there may be another round during the decisive battle. There are a total of 4 missions. For the intermediate 6-headed king sea snake, this is high enough. After all, it can't be compared with Ella and space gems. Killing a mid-level sea monster was much less valuable than obtaining a lesser elf. It is conceivable that one day, when the smoke mission is decided to be involved with the sprite, how many smoke missions will be issued? I am afraid there will be more than 10. If it is decided to be involved with a real dragon, there may be more than 50 smoke missions, or even more. After all, the dragon is the noblest existence. Now it seems that the secret of dealing with the 6-headed king sea snake should be hidden in my Lisai's notes. List opened a notebook and began to read. He was not in a hurry to do the mission to find out the rat. When everything is ready, he will choose the right time to find out the rat. He turned to the first page of the first notebook. He raised his eyebrows. On the first page of the notebook, there was a drawing of a goat's head. The familiar shape immediately reminded him of the goat's head flag on the ghost ship. This is the symbol of the magic goat family. Why would it appear in my Lisai's research notebook? Could it be that she is a survivor of the magic goat family? The magic goat family had 2 branches. One focused on night cultivation, while the other focused on magic cultivation. With the failure of the palace coup, both armies were wiped out. He didn't expect that the sheep head symbol would appear on a wizard from the Flower Town. He then thought of my Lisai Truth's cruelty in torturing and killing hundreds of magic apprentices. List couldn't help but shake his head. They're really like a family. Curtis Truth was cruel enough to sacrifice living people, while my Lisai Truth tortured and killed magic apprentices. Their cruelty was exactly the same. No wonder the Magic Goat family even dared to plot against the Sapphire Dragon in order to help Annette live forever. The content of this notebook mainly recorded the release and perfection of some magic spells. It was roughly my Lisai's understanding and experience of refining magic spells. From beginning to end, it had nothing to do with the 6-headed sea serpent king. However, there was a detailed experience of casting the water magic, Water Wheel Wall, which could be used as a reference for the siren Chi to speed up her learning. List put down the notebook. He opened the second research notebook. The cover of this research notebook and the paper inside were badly damaged. It was obvious that my Lisai often read it. The first page also had a hand-drawn goat symbol and a line of scrawled serpentines. Death in the release of passion can strip away the purest soul. He did not understand what this sentence meant. He directly turned to the second page. From this page onwards, List became more and more frightened. It recorded the process of my Lisai killing all the magic apprentices. It was not the killing that was terrible, but the method and motive of her killing. She was studying the soul. She had been studying it since she was young, trying different methods to strip people's souls. For example, she could suddenly kill a magic apprentice when she reached the climax of mating and then begin to strip their souls. She had also tortured a magic apprentice to death before killing him and stripping his soul. She believed that when a person was in the most emotional state, the soul was the easiest to strip and the purest. List almost endured the numbness in his scalp and the discomfort in his heart as he forced himself to finish reading this research notebook. Then it could be determined that the reward of the smoke mission was the content of this research notebook. My Lisai invented a potion extracted from blood and named it Soul Disruptor. She never succeeded in stripping the soul, but she found the resentment in the blood of people dying, purified it, and made it into soul disruptor. It could make people's souls fall into chaos. It was not fatal, but it could easily make people stupid. However, soul disruptor was ineffective against people with strong mental power. For example, the Earth Knight, magicians, and the like had strong mental power. Even if they were injected with soul disruptor, they would only be dizzy for 10 days or half a month and could recover on their own. This is the reward that the smoke mission is going to give me. The soul disruptor to confuse the six-headed sea serpent king. The mental power of a mid-level sea monster should not be very weak. Perhaps it is aimed at the two immature snakeheads. He closed the research notebook and quickly went to the castle warehouse. The belongings of Mylisai that he had brought back had not been carefully sorted out. After rummaging, a total of 8 crystal tubes containing magic potions came into his sight. After casting Magic Eye, he could see that the green light was similar to the soul light he saw on the ghost ship. It was obvious that these were soul disruptors. He put away the crystal tubes. Liz thought about it and decided to continue reading the rest of the research notes. There were 3 research notes left. One recorded her research on magic arrays, which could be given to a Chi to study. The other recorded the strange experiments she had done, which had some reference value. The last one recorded the manuscript of the magic book she was going to publish, and even a name was ready, different kinds of bone processing techniques, Mylisai truth. The manuscript was not finished, but List was surprised to find that it actually recorded the processing of dragon bones. Dragon bones are a part of the dragon and contain the magic power of the dragon. The biggest difference between dragon bones and other body tissues of the dragon is that dragon bones are related to the soul. Legend has it that the soul of the dragon lives in its teeth, so the weapons made of dragon teeth are the most desired divine weapons of the night, the dragon teeth weapon. I don't have the means to buy dragon bones, but based on my research on dragon bones, I speculate that dragon bones are the source of dragon might. If you know a little bit about the past of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, you will know that there was a technique called dragon bones. The dragon might in dragon bones is stimulated by magic arrays. Chapter 327. Calcining dragon bones has such an effect. If it was verified, then the large pile of dragon bone fragments he had picked up would come in handy. As a man of action, List immediately began experimenting. He lit a bonfire. He threw in a few pieces of dragon bone fragments, and then began to wait for the dragon might to be produced. However, half a day passed, and the bonfire was about to be extinguished, but he did not feel the expected dragon might. He stirred the ashes of the firewood with his longsword, and found that the dragon bone fragments were only charred black on the surface. There was not much change. Is the fire not enough, or the bones are not broken enough? He immediately ordered a servant to bring a tin box, and then put in charcoal, poured some grease, and started a fire. The temperature at the center of the fire was already very high. He continued to beat the dragon bone fragments into smaller pieces and scatter them into the furnace. However, after half a day, there was still no dragon might. Is Mylisai's deduction wrong, or the dragon bone fragments in my hand have completely decayed and can't release dragon might at all, or the dragon bone is ineffective in burning it? After all, it is a fire dragon, an expert in playing with fire. He thought. He took out the only dragon fixing bone from the space gem. The dragon anchor bone technique had been lost with the destruction of the magic goat family. This remaining dragon bone was no longer of any use. Dragon bones can release dragon might, and the bones of dragon beasts can also release a little. Since the dragon fixing bone is still fresh, I might as well give it a try. He no longer hesitated and directly knocked a small piece from the dragon fixing bone. He threw it into the reignited fire. After a moment, a weak aura suddenly erupted from the bonfire, instantly giving List goosebumps. His heart tightened as he thought of the dragon's might he had felt when the invisible dragon had arrived at that time. Compared to that, the dragon might this time was very faint and weak, but it was indeed dragon might. After a moment, The faint dragon might had slowly dissipated. List extinguished the fire and returned to the castle. He was a little excited. Sure enough, my Lisai's guess was right. Calcining dragon bones can release dragon might. The fire dragon's bone fragments might not be able to produce dragon might due to decay or resistance. Only this dragon beast bone can still release some dragon might. I wonder if it can scare Tulamakita. He had already decided. Combined with the snake blood fruit, the soul disruptor potion, and the dragon's might, the triple disrupted the release of Permita's magic. In this way, we have all the restrictive spells, interference spells, and the ultimate skill, the magic fire dragon, ready. All we have to do is wait for the trap to be set up to hunt down Gramita. The snake blood fruit was not difficult to purchase. The flower caravan bought a batch of snake blood fruit potted plants from Coral Island, a total of 22 pots. Because of the season, they haven't bloomed yet. It looked a little like a chili and was about the height of 2 palms. Unfortunately, Sir Lord, there are no snake blood fruits for sale on the Coral Island. We only bought some potted plants. Harpagon reported. Continue to buy snake blood fruit potted plants. List ordered indifferently. He didn't care much about the outcome of the flower caravan. The Tulip Castle caravan had not yet returned. He didn't know if they had bought the snake blood fruit, but the Beer Castle caravan had sent a batch of snake blood fruit through the flower port, about 1,000 pounds. The snake blood fruit was a dried fruit. There were several islands in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire where there were many poisonous snakes, so the local lords would hoard the snake blood fruit. The Beer Castle caravan channels were complex, and it was easy to contact these small lords. There were enough snake blood fruits. All the parts of the plan were in place. When Marcus returned to Flower Town by boat, List directly ordered, "Teacher Marcus, I need you to go to Black Horse Island again and bring Griffin and Russell back. The Earth Knight is the main manpower in this battle against the six-headed Sea Serpent King. We need to train in advance." Just after hearing List's decision, Marcus also tried to persuade him. But compared to Gort's dejection, his eyes flashed with a high fighting spirit. "Sir, your plan is perfect. I think Dosen should take on more important tasks. Although Dosen is not really mature, the six-headed sea serpent is not an adult either. Perhaps Dosen can fight the six-headed sea serpent king head-on. It will act as the main force, and you need to take this opportunity to train it to fight." List nodded. Yes, Dosen should have a good fight. Keeping it in the yard will kill its wild nature. One more thing. Since you plan to inject soul disruptors with bows and arrows to interfere with the release of magic by the six-headed sea serpent king, it is better to let the apprentice knight join the battle with bows and arrows. There is highly toxic bee venom in your collection. The arrows are coated with poison. I believe it has a certain lethality to the six-headed sea serpent king. This is a good addition. After communicating with Marcus, the snake beheading plan was more complete. At the end of March, spring plowing has begun. Apart from the 1,500 people working on Black Horse Island, Flower Town still has more than 3,000 people. Hundreds of serfs are digging river traps in the name of dredging the canals. Most of the remaining serfs were farming, striving to sow seeds on all the cultivated farmland within the range of the Flower Town and the Thorns Ridge. Compost piled up over the winter is also being continuously sprinkled into the farmland. All serfs are equipped with a full set of farming tools, from bone shovels, bone hoes, bone knives, to wooden barrels, wooden basins, and shoulder poles. Their work efficiency has been greatly improved. After List returned from inspecting the river traps, he took Zambrata, Blair, Nemo, and other town officials to continue to inspect the spring plowing work. Killing monsters is important, but so is spring plowing. On the ridge, he looked at the scene of the serfs facing the yellow soil and gave important instructions. The development of Flower Town is not easy to come by. As town officials, you must pay great attention to it and be sure to preside over this spring plowing task. The barren fields that have been cultivated in the town are not allowed to be abandoned. Yes, my lord, the officials responded. Gort and Isaiah are going to preside over the excavation of the canals, so the task they should have undertaken, starting with Blair, you will take it over. Yes, my lord. Subsequently, List took the officials to the settlements to inspect, meet with the stewards of the settlements, and hear about the progress of spring plowing. Although he did not put on a friendly attitude and went down to the fields to talk cordially with the serfs, the image of the Lord attaching importance to farming has been shaped. No one dares to be sloppy when it comes to spring plowing. In fact, there is no need for such a gesture. The serfs will not be lazy. Most of them live a hard life. After coming to Flower Town, the benevolent Lord, abundant food and clothing, jobs that can earn money everywhere, and the distribution of labor that works more, let them see hope. I want to cultivate 20 acres of farmland this year, all of which will be planted with wheat. A newly arrived serf watched the Lord and his entourage leave, his heart in full swing. My wife and children have died of famine. I'm still young. If I earn enough money, I can still marry another wife and have a bunch of children. Almost all the sold serfs have lost their loved ones. After the grief, they are eager to reorganize a new family. And the great, benevolent, and noble Lord has given them a visible opportunity. Chapter 3:28. This chapter is for the Alliance Master feeding my horse to sheep. There are 9 chapters left, which will be added later. On the first morning of April, Gort's son was born. On the first day of his arrival in this world, there was no movement. Not only did the forest not call his name, but even a midwife responsible for delivering the baby did not know the baby's name. Only the old servant hired by Gort washed the baby and placed him by Freja's bedside. Freja, it's a boy. Master will be happy to know. Yes. Freja's pale face flashed with a maternal luster. She looked at her son's wrinkled little face and said, "His name is Donald, Donald Mast." The old servant smiled. "Donald, what a nice name. Freja, you have to rest well. I'll help you with anything." The castle's housekeeper, Moss and Patty, sat by the bed and said, "Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. Mr. Gort is Sir Lord's advisor. His son is born, so we should come and help. Unfortunately, Sir Lord and Mr. Gort have important work to do, so they can't witness Donald's birth. Sir Lord said that he, Donald Mast, will become Sir Lord's retainer knight at some point in the future. I'm looking forward to that day." Freja smiled as she thought of such a scene. As a secret lover, although she gave birth to an aristocratic child, she still had no status to speak of. However, as a mother, she certainly hoped that her son would have a great future. Gort could not and did not dare to give it, but Sir Lord could. One day, his son would be like everyone else, living under the sun and growing up strong and healthy. She turned her head, kissed the forehead of the sleeping baby, and murmured, "My son, since you were not born, I called your name every day, outside the house." The sun was shining brightly, and the weather was getting hotter. "You look a little uneasy, Advisor Gort," List asked in a relaxed manner as he stood at the construction site of the river trap and watched the serfs laboriously transporting the soil. "A little. As you know, Freja's due date has arrived. You can go back first at noon. Thank you for your generosity, my lord. The river trap is almost complete. You don't have much work to do here. Now, I'm going to give you a new task. Sir, feel free to instruct me. Gort will do his best to complete it. Do you know that a lot more freedmen have settled in the Flower Town recently? A total of more than 150 people have been registered in the administrative office's files, sir." This was List's request to compile an identity file for every Flower Town resident. It was similar to household registration. Some people might be curious about the Flower Town, so they sent rats disguised as freedmen. List said in a serious tone, "I need you to find them within 3 days. If I'm not wrong, there are a total of 3 mice. But don't act rashly and alert them. Confirm the name list first." Once the mice were caught, the smoke task would be completed, and Mururmita might directly attack. He did not let a Chi enter the water to spread her smell to lure Mururmita, so the probability of attack was not easy to judge. But referring to the appearance of the invisible dragon, the smoke mission's ability to stir the threads of fate was very powerful. List knew too little about the legendary sacred dragon. It would be bad if Mururmita directly attacked before the river trap was completed. Rats? Gort was shocked. There are rats in the flower town? Sir, I need to cooperate. Carl of the patrol will cooperate with you. Yes, with Carl's cooperation, I will find the rats and leave no one alive. Gort responded loudly. In fact, his heart was beating like a drum. There were rats in the flower town, and he didn't even know about it. This was an oversight. He didn't know if the rats had found out anything about the Black Horse Island. Of course, the nobles were familiar with rats. They always lived in the dark and did things that the nobles did not want to do. Since Flower Town attracted foreign caravans to do business, it was difficult to guarantee that there would not be rats mixed in, not to mention that many free people came to settle down. What he was really worried about was that List even knew the number of rats, indicating that everything in Flower Town was under his control. Gort felt that he had been a little lax recently. He didn't know if he had left a bad impression on List. He needed to remedy it. He said in his heart, I had to be alert to deal with the rat incident. Back then, the student he taught was just a cowardly youth, and he could easily bluff his way through. However, after coming to Flower Town, the teenager changed dramatically. This made him feel the fear of a subordinate toward a superior. Although this was a young lord who seemed to know how to enjoy life and delegate power, he had a strong desire for control. He had no doubt that List would go to a higher rank, even comparable to the Count. The knight's glory favored him more than anyone else. Moreover, looking at the busy construction site, List originally thought that hunting intermediate sea monsters was a very unwise choice. He was blinded by continuous success. Now he believed that List was really sure that he could hunt intermediate sea monsters. If the hunt is successful, I'm afraid this coral island will no longer be able to trap him. Gort followed behind List, looking at the tall and straight back, and his thoughts ran wild. But are intermediate sea monsters really so easy to kill? Looking at the continuous excavation and arrangement of traps, Gort was worried and hopeful. At this time, the river has been widened to a width that can accommodate more water, but a small river is still a small river. There is very little water, and the water level can at most be knee-deep. About a kilometer away from the seaside, it was cut off in the middle. The surrounding soil slopes were originally high, and now the soil from digging the river was piled higher. Around the hillside, there were dense rock thorns of various sizes, forming a large stone forest surrounding the entire river section. This was the result of Dosun's hard work over the past few days. This place will become the meat grinder battlefield for hunting Gromita. Marcus was leading the Earth Knight back and forth, familiarizing himself with the surrounding terrain. There was also a group of trainee knight following behind, each carrying a few quiver of arrows on their back. The arrows inside had been dipped in the highly toxic bee venom. Marcus also had a quiver on his back. His arrows were divided into two types, one without poison and the other with poison. Both were falcon feather arrows that he was reluctant to use. They were made from the feathers of the winged peregrine falcon in World of Warcraft. They were originally made for List, but List gave them to him. His arrows weren't dipped in ordinary poison, but a soul disruptor. Well, it couldn't be said to be dipped in poison. The soul disruptor was wrapped in rosin on the arrowhead, and the sharp tip of the arrowhead pierced through the rosin, thus completing the injection of the soul disruptor into Perimeter's body. As long as he could disrupt Gromita's magic, even the most powerful intermediate World of Warcraft would be nothing more than a thick piece of meat on a chopping board. Chapter 329. This chapter is for the leader, Bittertree. There are 7 chapters left, which will be added later. Lunch was eaten at the construction site. List's dishes were very simple. Only roasted World of Warcraft meat, seafood, steak, scrambled eggs, egg soup, vegetable salad, a few kinds of pasta, milk tea, and juice. After lunch, Paris, who had walked around the entire river a few times, rushed over. Sir Baron, it seems that this trap is really good with your preparation, but are you sure that the 6-headed Hydra King will come here? I am afraid that the snake blood fruit alone is not enough to attract the 6-headed Hydra King, and its location cannot be determined. The vast sea was boundless. Who knew where Gromita was hiding now? But List knew and was confident in attracting it. He smiled. Believe me, It is not difficult to attract the six-headed Hydra King. It just takes a little patience. His gaze moved to the upstream where the river was intercepted. A relatively deep pond had been dug there. Starting the morning after tomorrow, a chi would be moved to the pond and began to be used as bait to lure Gromita. Then, List would announce the capture of the mouse, the completion of the smoke mission, and the mission reward. The day before the start of Operation Snake, List, under the blossoming apple tree, made a final exchange with Marcus. 7 Earth Knights are enough to take on the auxiliary hunting work, but Teacher Marcus, you and I have the most important task. Not only do you have to complete the injection of the Soul Disruptor into the six-headed Hydra King, but you also have to shoot the Fire Dragon in time to release the Fire Dragon magic. Sir, please rest assured, I am confident in my archery. That's good. He thought that there were only 7 Earth Knights in charge of the battle, but accidents always came. On this day, the elite Earth Knight Charles Trapp, who had been thinking for a long time, suddenly came to Flower Town. I have thought it through. As a wandering Lord Knight, I care too much about my past aristocratic identity, so much so that it hinders my pursuit of more glory. When Charles saw List, he knelt on one knee. I am willing to follow Sir Baron as an ordinary freeman. Abandoning one's identity as a noble was no small matter. It required a great deal of courage. List was surprised. He didn't expect Charles, who was over 40 years old, to have such courage. To be honest, he didn't intend to accept this follower. After all, he was afraid of being deceived. However, after abandoning the aristocratic title, Charles was just a simple elite Earth Knight, and there were no more barriers. He thought for a moment and still did not immediately agree. Since you are willing to put down your noble identity, Charles, if you follow me, you will be treated the same as other Earth Knight. Can you accept it? I'm willing to accept. I still have my concerns, but I'm willing to give you a chance. Become my battle partner on the path of pursuing the glory of the night. List looked into his eyes and said, I'm preparing to kill a mid-level sea monster. It's very dangerous, and I might die, so I need manpower. If you join, no matter what the result is, you will be my follower. Intermediate sea monster? Charles was taken aback. His eyes showed a slight struggle, and then he knelt on one knee. I have made a decision to follow in the footsteps of Sir. Let hunting mid-level sea monsters be the beginning of trust. If I unfortunately die in battle, please treat my wife and children well, sir. Okay, I accept your follower. An elite Earth Knight with considerable combat power, List had no reason not to accept the follower. In this situation, one more combat power meant one more chance of success in the snake-killing operation. Perhaps it was impossible to fight the six-headed sea serpent king head-on, but an elite Earth Knight would definitely be far better than an apprentice knight and an ordinary Earth Knight. Casting nets, shooting arrows, dumping rubber. Charles would definitely be able to do it. The third day, April 4th, the weather was clear, windless, and cloudless. Sir, all 3 mice have been captured. Gort came to report. Interrogate them strictly, find out who sent them, how much information they have, and how much information they sent. Then, I don't need to explain how to deal with it, List said lightly. Of course, I will take care of it. Please rest assured, sir. You and Isaiah withdraw all the serfs. It is no longer safe here. Gort breathed a sigh of relief, then bowed. Sir, the knight's glory favors you. I wish you victory and kill the mid-level sea monster. The serfs and irrelevant people withdrew from the river trap one after another. Here, only the Earth Knight and the bow-wielding apprentice knight remained. The number did not exceed 100, and most of them were teenagers who had not received training for a long time. List had a solemn expression. This battle was far more dangerous than the World of Warcraft campaign in the Thorns Ridge. A little negligence would cause a lot of damage. However, Paris and Dosin were by his side, so there was no need to worry about his safety. What he had to do was to calmly command the snake-killing operation and kill Giramita at the lowest cost. Achi had been in the dug pond all morning, and the smell should have spread to the sea. If Giramita's perception was sensitive, it should have already followed the smell. However, considering that a chi replenished seawater at the seaside every time Gyuramita never appeared. It was hard to say whether it would arrive on time or not. Perhaps the smoke mission's help would be needed. In front of him, a misty smoke slowly emerged and eventually formed an expectant serpentine. Mission completed. Reward: attack of the six-headed sea serpent king. The power of fate was already secretly affecting. List pressed his hand on the hilt of the red blood sword, calming his nerves, and then turned his head to look at the fire dragon jars at his feet. A total of 12 fire dragon jars gathered all the fire dragon magic, including the fire dragon magic of the brick factory. List tested it. After releasing all the magic, the small magic fire dragon covered a range of 40 meters, and the temperature could burn everything. After all, it originated from a fire dragon that could create volcanoes, and the magical power contained in it was far more powerful than ordinary fire magic. "Are you nervous, Paris?" he suddenly asked. Paris smiled softly. "I have seen a light dragon, and even a light dragon did not scare me, let alone a mid-level sea monster. Sir Baron, please rest assured." List nodded. List no longer spoke. A new smoke mission had appeared in front of him. Mission: the decisive battle is about to begin. For the peace of the territory, for the safety of the sirens, for the glory of the night, it is time to show the dignity and inviolability of the Lord. Kill the invading mid-level sea monster, the six-headed sea serpent king. Reward: an unknown number of sprite worms. He did not think about the unknown number of sprite worms. He waited for the arrival of Gyuramita with rapt attention. Time passed slowly. Apart from the chirping of insects and birds, there was no other movement. This kind of waiting was the most test of patience. List did not know what his subordinates were thinking, but he himself remained calm, not anxious or impatient. He knew better than anyone that Gyuramita would definitely come. Chapter 330. This chapter is My Sky is the Sea of Stars. Please update it. In a flash, 2 hours passed. In the face of the silent situation, everyone could not help but be anxious. Even Marcus stood on the mound on the opposite side of the river, waving to List and asking about the situation. List responded to him with a calm gesture, took out his binoculars, and continued to observe the river and seaside in the distance. This morning was the high tide period. He deliberately chose to start the task at noon, ready to wait for the ebb tide to expand the land space to hunt the Talimida. The tide slowly receded, and the trace of the Talimida never appeared. The binoculars moved away from the seaside and observed along the river. About 200 meters from the river trap, rock thorns have formed a dense stone forest, and there are some thorns and poisonous thorns sown by the thorn sprite Ella. On both sides of the river, there are stone walls pulled by ropes. Cutting the ropes will inevitably collapse, blocking the river and completing the encirclement. There are 4 bonfires around the main battlefield of the river trap. 3 are used to boil snake blood fruit to release the smell, and 1 is used to calcine dragon bones to release the dragon's might. On both sides of the mound, there are barrels of rubber. The serfs of Black Horse Island madly collected more than 50 barrels of rubber without seriously damaging the rubber trees. Once it is poured into the river trap, coupled with the sand and Dosen's rock thorns, it is believed that it will soon be glued together. Beside each earth knight, there is a large pile of ship nets and various kinds of silk threads, which List sent people to purchase from all over the place. Just wait for the Talimida to appear, then throw it madly. Try to entangle the Talimida. The arrows dipped and be venom, held in the hands of every trainee knight, do not need to be accurate, as long as they can hit the huge Talimida and play a role in interference. The real killing moves are in the hands of List and Marcus. The binoculars continued to be aimed at the seaside, and List displayed the magic to see what was going on. However, it was futile. The magic I could not observe too far away. How much longer do we have to wait? Another half an hour passed, and the sun was already tilting to the west. List could barely keep his composure. Don't tell me there's something wrong with this method of luring a chi out. Or maybe can't even go ashore. But it's like dating. The woman would only come late if the man waited anxiously. Suddenly, a string of snake heads appeared on the surface of the sea. They appeared clearly in List's binoculars, which he had yet to put away. There was no need to count. It was clear that there were 6 snake heads in total. The black and white stripes could be vaguely seen, but it only lasted for a moment before all the snake heads dove back into the water. "It's coming. Pay attention," List shouted and continued to observe the seaside with his binoculars. In less than a minute, Murumida, who had been waiting for a long time, was completely exposed in the retreating waves. On its short and stout body, there were 6 slender snake heads, which made it look particularly strange. It swam slowly along the river, raising its head from time to time to observe the situation above the water, but did not slow down in the slightest. Because the depth of the river was really pitiful, it could not keep still when it swam, creating big ripples and stirring up the silt in the river. When it swam past the 200-meter section of the river, there was no need for List to remind them. All the night could hide in the bunker and see Murumida's figure. It was a strange sea snake, 7 or 8 meters long, with 6 messy but orderly heads. Moreover, just as List had speculated, 2 of its 6 heads were obviously thinner, appearing particularly obvious. Those were the heads of immature snakes. The prepared flags were already waving at the foot of the hillside. This was a signal. The knight hiding in the campfire immediately took out a match, blew out the flames, and quickly lit the campfire. At the same time, he poured the mashed snake blood fruit into the pot, mixed it with a little water, and began to boil the taste of the fruit. When Murumida entered the river trap area, List's palms were already sweating. The huge sea snake looked particularly dangerous. A little closer, he observed Murumida with magic eyes, paying attention to its magic power and whether it was ready to spit out magic, and ready to give orders at any time. He was the leader of the snake slaying operation, and all orders would be issued by him. At this moment, Murumida clearly felt the uneasy atmosphere of the surrounding environment, and it raised its 6 tongues and looked around. But nothing could be sensed except the mound. The snake flicked its tongue, but there was no heat radiation from living things, and no shadow of living things could be seen. To be honest, List did not know if the 6-headed sea snake king relied on infrared perception like ordinary snakes. After all, this world was not Earth. All he could do was hide behind the soil. Let the soil be a cover. Now it seemed that the 6-headed sea snake king could not find them yet, so it looked around for a moment and continued to swim. It had smelled the delicacy of the sea demons, which was a great tonic for it, and it was absolutely reluctant to give it up. For the sake of this delicacy, it had been wandering in this strange sea for a full 3 months. Today, the delicacy was right in front of it. Paddling forward, its body swam to the middle of 2 mounds and was chosen as the hunting battlefield. At this moment, List, who was hiding in the hole, suddenly widened his eyes and shouted, "Dosen, multiple rock thorns." Trembling Woods, who was also hiding in the hole, sprang out like an arrow. He opened his mouth and cast a spell. In an instant, countless rock spikes emerged from the place where Murumida was. One of them accurately pierced Murumida's body, piercing its snake skin and causing blood to spray out. Murumida hissed, and its snake body instantly arched and coiled into a lump in the river. 4 of its 6 snake heads had opened, and there was magic brewing in them. However, before it could release magic, countless arrows had risen from behind the mound and flew toward it. Their aim was smashed, but a few arrows still pierced its body. The arrowheads, dipped in intense bee venom, were so toxic that they could melt into blood upon contact. Murumida was in pain, and the magic in 3 of its heads collapsed instantly, but one of its heads had already released its magic, which was water arrow volley. Dozens of water arrows were aimed at the sky with great speed. Because it shook its head in pain, its casting direction was disrupted. The next moment, when it was ready to release magic again, Dosen's multiple rock thorns were released again, and Murumida had no choice but to twist its body. On the other side, the poisoned arrows were still shooting, and the Earth Knights began to cast nets and silk threads. These large ship nets and silk threads tied to stones surrounded Muru Mida's snake head. Although it couldn't hurt it, it was still so uncomfortable that its snake head was almost knotted, entangled by the ship nets with holes in the mesh and the tangled silk threads. After Charles Pitfall threw the ship net in his hand, he quickly pounced forward, grabbed the rubber bucket on the ground, smashed the layer of condensed rubber on the surface of the bucket, and threw it directly into the river. After him, several other Earth Knights also threw buckets, and in the blink of an eye, all 50 buckets of rubber were poured into the river. The rubber was quickly stirred by the twisting Muru Mida, mixed with mud and broken rock thorns. Almost at the same time. Chapter 331. Marcus's arrows were not ordinary arrows. They were improved falcon feather arrows and falcon tail arrows, with ironwood thorns as the shaft, keel as the arrowhead, and World of Warcraft wind peregrine falcon feathers as the balance. The best set of arrows in Flowertown. He pulled out 2 arrows wrapped in Soul Disruptor and aimed at an immature snakehead of Gromida. A mature snakehead must have strong mental strength and resistance. An immature snakehead was the best target for interference. A Soul Disruptor would definitely make it crazy. It was difficult to shoot the twisting snakehead, but fortunately, he had 8 arrows to try. Pucci. Finding an opportunity, the bowstring was released, and the arrows guided by Chi shot at an immature snakehead. Unfortunately, the 2 arrows just flew past the snakehead and failed to hit it. But he was not in a hurry, as if he was not facing an intermediate sea monster, but an ordinary beast. At least for a short time, Gromida was not much of a danger to him, because Dosen had already pounced on it. This gradually maturing intermediate World of Warcraft Blizzard beast had been trained by Liz for a long time, and its intelligence development was by no means comparable to ordinary World of Warcraft. It understood the essence of guerrilla tactics. When the enemy advances, I retreat, snakeskin movement, and release rock thorns when there was time. Not only did it put Gromida in a dilemma, but it also constantly attracted Gromida's intermittent magic firepower. Water arrows were shot randomly, aimed at the hill, splashing mud everywhere. The water blade was swung, and it was indeed Dosen's shadow. 1 snake and 1 dog, unexpectedly, were in a brief stalemate, and it seemed that Dosen had the upper hand. As long as Gromida showed signs of retreating, Dosen would rush up and release rock thorns to seal its position. As long as Gromida released magic to fight back, Dosen would jump wildly to escape. This was just like an enhanced version of rural fun, a native dog fighting a water snake. When attacked, the snake would first coil up to defend, instead of turning around to escape, and the same was true for Gromida. But the coiled-up Gromida was simply a live target for Dosen's rock thorns. The net, threads, and arrows interfered with it, preventing it from successfully releasing its Water Wave Shield. Water Wave Shield was a defensive spell. It could summon a huge shield of water that would condense on the surface of one's body like a wave. It could neutralize a large number of attacks. Without the Water Wave Shield, the strength of the 6-headed Sea Snake King was greatly reduced. Pucci. Just as its attention was attracted by Dosen, 2 more arrows shot out, accurately hitting the head of one of the immature snakes. Moreover, they were shot through the eyes. The soul-disrupting agent was injected in an instant. In the next moment, the snake's head began to twist wildly, lashing out like a whip. It even aimed at the neighboring snake's head and bit down hard. Taking advantage of such an opening, Marcus shot another 2 arrows, successfully piercing the other immature snake head of Gira Makita. He still had 2 arrows left, so he shot 2 more arrows. This time, he aimed at the mature snake's head. Unfortunately, due to the chaotic twisting of the snake's head, it missed its target and missed. The 2 snake heads successfully fell into chaos, crazily biting at the mature snake's head. This caused the 4 mature snake heads to fall into panic. They immediately stopped coiling up and prepared to leave. However, how could List let such an opportunity go? He commanded Dosen to pounce again and entangle it. On the other side, The trainee knight in charge of calcining the dragon's bones had already raised a raging flame, burning the dragon's bones with crackling sounds. In an instant, a huge firebird rose from the flame and radiated in all directions. This firebird came very fiercely. The frantic and fearful Giramikita was immediately scared to the ground. It couldn't move. But surprisingly, Dosen was also trembling in fear and didn't dare to attack, wasting such a great opportunity. The knights were already prepared. They continued to stir sand and fill soil, striving to speed up the solidification of this shallow river section and freeze Giramikita. The smell of cooking snake blood fruit also began to drift over. It was as if the smell had stimulated the two immature snake heads that were still in a frenzy. They began to cause trouble again, biting the four mature snake heads and making them unable to release any magic. "Get up, Dosen. Kill it for me." List kicked the shivering Dosen, this disappointing mutt. Dosen, multiple rock thorns. Dosen woke up from the kick. Its body was still trembling, but it still managed to release a rock thorns and stabbed Giramikita, pinning it to the ground. The mud mixed with rubber began to solidify. The entanglement of the nets and threads became tighter and tighter. List knew that the opportunity had arrived. He immediately roared, "Marcus, get ready." With that, he immediately threw out a fire dragon jar. Marcus' ordinary arrows hit the fire dragon jars, flying in midair in a flash and shattered them. List continued to throw the fire dragon jars, while Marcus continued to shoot arrows. In the short time it took for dragon might to erupt, the 12 fire dragon jars all exploded in the air, and the volcanic glassware that Brad had painstakingly carved was broken into pieces. Without any heartache, the magic eye was cast. List saw the magic of the fire dragons mixed together to form a huge magic fire dragon, swooping towards the recovered Giramikita. Boom! Passing through its body, the heavily injured Murumita let out a shrill, hissing sound. Its body bounced up like a rubber band. Blood splattered all over the ground as it jumped out of the quagmire and fled into the rock forest. "All of you retreat. Retreat 40 meters away." Only List could see the magic fire dragon, so the heavy burden of stopping Giramikita could only be accomplished by him and Dosen. His hand pointed in the direction of Giramikita's escape. Dosen, multiple rock thorns. The firebird came and went quickly, and Dosen had regained his composure. Under List's command, he opened his mouth and released multiple rock thorns, stabbing Giramikita and preventing it from escaping. With this delay, the magic fire dragon swooped down again and burned Giramikita fiercely. The two crazy snake heads twisted frantically, not knowing if it was attracted by the smell of the snake blood fruit, disrupting its thinking. This caused Giramikita's body to twitch a few times, and it couldn't even escape. Puff! Multiple rock thorns were released again. Boom! The magic fire dragon swooped down again, and the range of 40 meters had become a desperate distance for Giramikita. The disturbance of the soul disruptor, the bleeding wounds, the rock thorns stuck in its body, and perhaps the arrows dipped in bee venom, were all taking its life. When a magic fire dragon swooped down for the 4th time, Giramikita's 4 tight snakeheads finally went completely limp, its breath rapidly fading, and the magic in its body slowly dissipated. The faint fragrance of snake meat began to spread. List, who had been observing with magic eyes, promptly commanded Dosen to rush forward. "Dosen, hurry, bite its tail, and drag it away." Dosen, who had already adapted to List's complex instructions, pounced forward, bit Giramikita's tail, and dragged it away. "Paris, you come too. Drag it away." Taking advantage of the time when the magic fire dragon flew away, the two men and the dog successfully dragged the dying Grumble-Mida 40 meters away. "Sir, the 6-headed sea serpent king is not dead yet. Be careful." Marcus circled around and ran over. When he saw List personally dragging Giramikita, he couldn't help but shout, "It can't survive. Teacher Marcus, you all go over there and bring the snake blood fruit potted plants I prepared. I'm going to water them with snake blood." Mid-level sea monster blood could certainly be sold for money, But combined with the smoke mission reward, he still felt that it was more cost-effective to use snake blood to breed sprite worms. Because the reward was an unknown number of sprite worms, perhaps more than one snake blood fruit sprite worm would be bred. Chapter 332. The snake killing operation was a complete success, and great excitement was written on everyone's face. They all surrounded the six-headed sea snake king, feeling its huge and ferocious appearance. Buckets of snake blood were quickly collected with buckets. They were poured on the snake blood fruit potted plants, but there was too much snake blood for the potted plants to hold it all. List didn't want to waste it. He wanted to maximize the benefits. Carry the snake blood to the carriage, along with the snake blood fruit potted plants, and immediately transport them back to the castle. Also, bring my shell back to the castle. He stood up and looked at the huge corpse of the six-headed sea snake king. Such a large corpse, due to the magic fire dragon, was almost cooked, so it would be difficult to sell it at a good price. After all, he had never heard of World of Warcraft and the materials of sea monsters being cooked and sold. The corpse of the six-headed sea snake king, drag it back to the castle, then decompose it into materials, see what important parts can be sold, and store the rest as food. List announced the disposal of the corpse. Suddenly, he felt the need to make a speech and inspire his followers. Everyone did their best to hunt the intermediate sea monster, the six-headed sea snake king. I have seen your courage and dedication. Now the spoils are here, and everyone can enjoy it. This is my decision. Raising his voice, he looked around. List said aloud, hunting the intermediate sea monster is just the beginning. In the future, more honor and glory awaits us. And the glory belongs to me. I am with you. I vow to follow you to the death. A quick-witted apprentice knight roared. It was Xavier. Then everyone, including the Earth Knights, began to roar loudly. We pledge our lives to follow Sir. The shouts were repeated over and over again, and against the corpse of the six-headed sea snake king, it was particularly hot-blooded and wild. List was very satisfied with such a scene. Of course, he also remembered Xavier's cleverness. When the shouting gradually stopped, he restored his serious expression. Then, clean up the hunting scene, take all the materials that can be taken away, and let's go back. Then he ran to the siren Chi and commanded the apprentice knight to carry the shell out of the pond, put on the flat carriage, pull it back to the castle, and then send it back to the Shellwood building. When they dragged the huge corpse of the six-headed sea serpent king back to the town, the entire flower town quickly boiled over. Curious civilians swarmed over, huddled together, and peeked at the mid-level sea monster's corpse. Many of them had never seen a low-level World of Warcraft in their lives, let alone a legendary creature like a mid-level sea monster. Of course, Dosen and the 8 brats were exceptions. Whispers could be heard incessantly as groups of 2s and 3s discussed in amazement. What is this World of Warcraft? It's too scary. This isn't World of Warcraft, it's a sea monster that eats ships. Heavens, how long is it? It actually has so many heads. The knight's glory favors us. Thank you, great lord, for killing such a terrifying World of Warcraft for us. May the knight's glory forever favors the flower town. It's not World of Warcraft, it's a kraken. I heard that Sir Lord killed the kraken with a single slash. A mid-level sea monster. It's a mid-level sea monster. It's as powerful as Sir Lord's Sir Dosen in World of Warcraft. It can spit out terrifying magic, roll up huge waves, and kill everyone it meets. My brother participated in the battle to kill the kraken. He saw Sir Lord riding on Dosen and killing the kraken with his own eyes. There is no World of Warcraft or kraken that Sir Lord cannot kill. It's worth at least 100 gold coins. Haha, old poke, are you joking? This is a mid-level sea monster. Look carefully, it can be sold for 1,000 gold coins. Its snake skin can be made into the best leather armor. Even an Earth Knight can't leave a mark on it. I really want to taste snake meat. You will explode from the kraken's flesh. There's a lot of magic inside that will tear your body into a rag, just like a scarecrow in a field. Ah, that's terrifying. At this moment, List should come out and accept the worship and cheers of the Flower Town subjects. However, he didn't. He just sent the town's officials to drive away the civilians who were crowding around the corpse of the six-headed Kraken King. He had more important things to do, such as sorting out the space gem. There were too many things inside, and it was already full. Now he had to store the snake blood that he couldn't use and takes him out every day to water the snake blood fruits. Without an anticoagulant to remove the clotting factors, the blood was difficult to preserve. Once it coagulated, the magic power inside would quickly dissipate. The great wizards who wrote The Secrets of Sea Serpent Monsters watered the fruits with snake blood once because it was very difficult to catch a living sea serpent monster. List, however, had a space gem that could store the snake blood for an unlimited amount of time. Fine Steel Knight set, floating bottle to store 36D Spectre, Mithril or Jade, Crystal, Black Pearl, Smoke Grass, Volcanic Glass, Fire Dragon Bone Fragment, Sapphire Magic Ring, Sheephead Flag, Sapphire Dragon Bow, Soul Sinking Wood, some night novels, and magic books. A lot of food, drinking water, and other daily necessities, bee venom and thorn venom, as well as essential picnic supplies. The gem space, which was half the size of a room, could not accommodate any more things. He took out some picnic supplies, books, bone fragments, volcanic glass, and the night set and placed them in the study. Only then did he put a total of 10 buckets of snake blood. There is still a little space. After I deal with the corpse of the six-headed Kraken King, I can put the extra world of Warcraft meat in it and use it slowly. This is the corpse of a mid-level sea monster. The nutritional value of its meat is far higher than that of low-level world of Warcraft meat. It is enough for me to eat for a long time. He didn't intend to share a trace of the six-headed Kraken King meat. Anyway, it would be a waste to give it to his followers. Only the elite Earth Knight who took drugs could make the most of the world of Warcraft meat. He was ready to take out gold coins to reward the followers who participated in the battle. If there was extra snake skin, he could give it to the Earth Knight and sew it to make a leather armor. Middle-level leather armor was definitely the best way to win people's hearts. But 3 seconds later, forget it, they didn't do much. 90% of the credit should be given to me. It would be a waste to give them leather armor. I'll just reward them with gold coins, a little more. I believe that the knight's love for gold coins is more than anything else. After all, gold coins can buy everything. The boss's bonus was to give oil, and the boss's bonus was to give money. He believed that everyone would choose money. Money represented the power that could be freely used. Moreover, the six-headed Kraken King was a treasure. List didn't even want to sell it. It must be known that even with gold coins, it would be very difficult to buy the materials of a mid-level world of Warcraft. He didn't know about Coral Island before, but now there was only one purple sand crocodile left. Chapter 333. This chapter is Adolf 0812, Reward Xianxia. The dissected materials were sent to the warehouse bit by bit, and then moved into the gem space bit by List. Soon, the gem space was filled again, but there was still a lot of snake meat left that could not be put in. The 8-meter-long sea serpent had a thick body and weighed nearly 2 tons. List directly ordered Mrs. Abby to marinate the snake meat, which would lose some of the magic contained in the meat, but at least it would not rot. The snake skin was damaged to a great extent. Because of the huge body of the six-headed king sea serpent, it can still be made into a complete set of leather armor, which is an excellent defensive material. This snakeskin alone can be sold for at least 1,000 gold coins. However, List intends to keep it to make leather armor for himself. He is not short of money anyway. In addition to snake blood, snake skin, and snake meat, there's also snake gallbladder, snake oil, snake viscera, snake tongue, snake bones, snake teeth, and snake venom. Basically, there is nothing that is not needed. So I decided that this six-headed king sea serpent will be my personal trophy and will not be sold to the public. He, the consultant Gort, the knight teacher Marcus, and the butler Carter made the final decision. Consultant Gort, teacher Marcus, how many gold coins will be given to the knight who participated in the battle? Yes, sir. No one refused to accept it. followers followed their lord into battle for the sake of rewards. There was still some time before the banquet. The civilians gathered in front of the castle have been driven away, but the story of the great lord slaying the mid-level sea monster will not stop for 10 days or half a month. When the flowers return to Black Horse Island, the civilians on Black Horse Island will continue to discuss it. Even when the caravan comes again, this story will be widely spread throughout the Coral Island. List slaying the snake. Ignoring the fact that the six-headed king's sea serpent was underage and went ashore, ignoring the huge involvement of Dosen, ignoring the crazy assistance of the knight, and ignoring the huge investment in the early stage. The protagonist of the story was always only one person, the Flower Town's Baron, who slayed a mid-level sea monster with a single sword strike. At the same time, all the nobles understood that the time of List's rise was coming soon, perhaps after this year's development order was issued. With the ability to kill mid-level sea monsters, it was enough to fight for glory on the battlefield. However, at this moment, List's reputation for slaying snakes was limited to the Flower Town. The six-headed sea serpent king was quickly dissected, and a large number of materials were hidden in List's spatial gem. He left a complete snake head behind and prepared to make it into a snake head specimen after it was tanned. He would then hang it on his throne to show off the Lord's authority. It was just like how the Count had a seat covered with the hide of the colossal bear from World of Warcraft. Hunting mid-level World of Warcraft and mid-level sea monsters was enough to be praised for a lifetime. In addition, he also took out some snake meat roasted by the magic fire dragon for tonight's snake meat dinner. Although he had decided to take the spoils for himself, he could still be generous and let his subordinates have a taste of mid-level sea monsters. As for the snake meat, it was injected with a lot of bee venom, which was not a problem. Chefs were very proficient in removing the poison, as many World of Warcraft meat were poisonous. The snake blood fruit potted plants watered with snake blood had been moved to the castle's flower garden. They were waiting to give birth to a sprite worm. "Sir Baron, I'm going back." Paris stretched her waist. Her beautiful figure was very pleasing to the eye. After messing around for a day, I didn't expect that hunting mid-level sea monsters would be so easy. Your powerful but very rare bottles are too powerful. The six-headed sea serpent king can't resist them. That was the magic power of a dragon, which mid-level sea monsters certainly couldn't resist. List smiled slightly. "Don't forget to come to the dinner to eat snake meat. I definitely won't miss such a good thing." Paris nodded, turned around, and left. Withdrawing his appreciative gaze, List returned to the castle's second floor, took a bath, cleaned up the smell of sweat and blood, and took a look at the smoke mission reward. Mission completed. Reward: unknown number of snake blood fruit sprite worms. List was surprised. It's still an unknown number of sprite worms, but it's clear that they're snake blood fruit sprite worms. Could it be that even the smoke mission can't determine how many snake blood fruit sprite worms I will cultivate? Or does this mean that I might not be able to cultivate a single sprite worm? He quickly figured out the factors. The choice of fate is probably in my hands. If I stop cultivating, I won't be able to breed a single sprite worm, but if I continue cultivating, I might be able to breed more sprite worms. But after thinking about it again, he became confused. The previous mission reward was how to deliver the snake blood fruit sprite worms to me. If I don't water the snake blood fruit with snake blood, it will be impossible to breed sprite worms. It is even more impossible for the smoke mission to fabricate sprite worms out of thin air. What kind of logic is this? The smoke mission would not fabricate a reward out of thin air. This was for sure. It only used the power of fate to stir the various threads of cause and effect, determining the random outcome as inevitable. Could it be that the smoke mission actually involves my thoughts and fate? List pondered again. This logic was correct. After all, he speculated that the smoke mission itself was a form of the power of fate radiating through his mind. However, he felt that this explanation was a bit far-fetched. After thinking it over, he could not find a better explanation. List could only give up and focus on the new mission. Mission: the crazy cutting of rubber has caused major damage to the rubber forest. It will take time to restore the vitality. However, the rubber tree sprite worm triplets have a different opinion. Please find out their special ability. Reward: 1 sprite worm. It was another mission about the rubber tree sprite worm triplets. Is this a chain mission? Doubts flashed through List's mind. He looked at the content of the reward, which was astonishingly another sprite worm. Is it spring, the beginning of the sprite worm harvest season? Can I crazily breed new sprite worms through the smoke mission? I don't know which sprite worm it will be this time. Could be a new rubber tree sprite worm. The rubber tree mission rewarded the rubber tree sprite worm. Very clear logic. He even thought that maybe the triplets could mate with each other and breed new rubber worms, which was their special ability. The possibility was relatively small, but what if it was true? After taking a bath, wiping himself clean, and putting on new clothes, List was still thinking about the special ability of the rubber worm triplets. If I'm not mistaken, when saving the rubber forest, the triplets will show their special ability. I should go to Black Horse Island as soon as possible, collect the magic fire dragon, and restore the operation of the brickyard. He grabbed his hair and fixed his hairstyle. He went straight to the worm room. After Ichi was sent back, he hadn't had time to see her, or he hadn't figured out how to face her. Murumida had been hunted, and the sea was no longer dangerous for the siren Ichi. What reason could he have to keep her in the Shellwood building, confined to this small room, which was almost equivalent to a secret chamber? Of course, Ichi could be regarded as the most beautiful thing in his private collection. Chapter 334. This chapter is Yang Yunfei 10,000 Rewards. The siren Ichi sat in the rocking chair, her graceful body swaying gently with the rocking chair. The round part covered by the water ribbon also gently changed shape, shaking up, then down, and then trembling twice. Hearing the sound of the door opening, she did not move, but glanced through the curtain. She did not have much awareness of protecting herself, because List stipulated that servants could only go in to clean at fixed times. The only one who could come in freely at other times was List. Brother. When Ichi saw him, she immediately smiled, her eyes curved into beautiful crescent moons, put down the magic book in her hand, and stood up. Below her ankles was still seawater, gently holding her up. Her height of about 1.55 meters made her look especially petite. She had fair and tender skin, a pair of straight and slender legs, and a head of silky blue hair. No matter how many times List has seen such a masterpiece, he can't help but be in a trance. Ichi, are you still reading? List came over and habitually rubbed her hair. The thorn sprite, Ella, who was taking a bath in the shell, snatched a line, wow. It was a greeting, but List ignored it. Ichi is studying my Lisai Truce research notes and studying the magic water wheel wall. I feel that I have understood it thoroughly and should be able to learn it soon. Ichi said happily. By the way, brother, Ichi saw you dissecting Tulamida. Hee. Now Ichi is no longer afraid. Now Ichi has learned 3 water magic, water arrow, and water bullet, and is about to learn the water wheel wall. From the beginning of her contact with magic to the present, it has been less than 3 months. This talent is almost unmatched in List's knowledge. Many magic apprentices may not be able to release the most basic magic in 2 or 3 years, let alone become a magician. According to Elkson, magic apprentices are generally chosen by young people between the ages of 10 and 15. Those who were able to become magicians before the age of 20 were all geniuses. Relying on their insight and understanding of magic, they had the opportunity to break through to the Archmage realm. Becoming a mage after the age of 20 meant that one did not have a strong affinity for magic or a weak understanding of magic. It was possible that one would be stuck at the mage level for the rest of their lives. Elkson, Glanny, and several other mages on Coral Island became mages after the age of 20. Of course, human mages could study any type of magic. In this regard, they were still fundamentally different from Ichi, who was only compatible with water magic. Perhaps his training speed was not as fast as Ichi, who specialized in one element, but in a battle of the same level, a Qi would definitely not be able to defeat a human magician. In any case, as long as it was in the sea, Aki's specialization in water magic would not be a disadvantage. Liz sat on the stool and said in a relaxed tone, "Since I promised you that I would kill Tulamita, I will definitely do it." Achi looked at him with admiration. "Yes, Big Brother is so amazing." Liz smiled calmly. "Just SOSO." After chatting for a while, getting to the point, Liz didn't want to speak anymore, but decided to ask, "Achi, Tulamita has been hunted, and the sea is safe for you again. So, do you want to go back to the sea to live?" She thought that Achi would be happy to return to the sea. She pursed her lips and looked aggrieved. "Brother, are you going to drive Achi away?" "How could I? You're my sister, you know? You are my family. Achi is so cute. How could I be willing to drive you away?" List held her soft, boneless hand. "I'm just worried that you will be bored in the castle. You don't have feet now and can't live like a normal human being." Achi looked down at the water below her ankles. "Achi will soon have feet. When you have feet, you will be able to live like a human being. At that time, living in the castle will not reveal your identity as a siren. You are the spirit of the sea, the brightest pearl in my mind. Human beings are the most complicated animals, and there are always people who will treat beautiful things cruelly. Well, Achi knows. It is written in many books that bad people harm elves, and there are also books that write sirens as bad people." Achi nodded. "So before you reach adulthood, you must protect yourself and don't let others discover your identity as a siren. In the castle, I can protect you, and I will protect you until the end of your life. But I respect your idea more. Do you want to live in the castle or in the sea?" Achi thought carefully and suddenly asked, "Brother, after Achi has feet, can I still go back to the castle and live with you?" "Of course you can. Didn't I say that you are my sister? It is natural for you to live with me." Liz said righteously. The siren Achi was his private property in his heart. It was impossible for her to leave. It was just that living in the castle was very risky. Once her identity as a siren was exposed, it would probably cause great trouble. Before he could protect Achi, Liz did not want to take this risk. Then, Achi will live by the sea in Flower Town. Achi finally made a decision. She was a sea spirit born in the sea and naturally longed to live in the sea. It's just that Achi doesn't want to leave my brother at all. Achi still wants to learn magic. "Oh, Achi is so sad," Achi said. Her big eyes suddenly became wet, and tears were about to fall. Wow! Ella flew over and landed on Achi's shoulder, trying to help her wipe her tears. Even under the telepathic connection, she complained to List and did not allow List to bully her siren sister. Wow! At this time, the atmosphere was very warm. Achi's true feelings made List filled with emotion. Hard work always pays off. He couldn't help but open his arms and hold Achi's body in his arms. He said gently, "Achi, don't be sad. I will build a big house by the sea and give it to Achi. I will live in the house often." "Really?" Achi raised her head from List's arms, and her expression quickly turned happy. "Of course, build a big house on the beach of the oyster settlement. Half of it will be soaked in the sea, and the other half will float on the sea. You can continue to study magic in the house, and I can also practice chi by the sea." List outlined in Achi's expectant eyes. With rubber, building a house was very simple. When the tide was low, the foundation and the rock platform were watered with rocks mixed with rubber water to ensure that it could withstand the waves. On the platform, the house could be built directly with ironwood thorns, or the flowers could pull a ship of bricks, or even the rocks of the Thorns Ridge. The house would be built soon, and the mistress would be hidden in the golden house. Chapter 335. Solving Achi's Living Problems. List's mood was now only refreshed. Before the banquet began, Gort and Marcus had calculated the rewards of the knight who participated in the battle. Excluding List and Paris, there were a total of 7 Earth Knights, each of whom would be rewarded 10 gold coins, 62 apprentice knights, each of whom would be rewarded 1 gold coin, and the construction and logistics officials, each of whom would be rewarded 1 silver coin. A total of 137 gold coins were rewarded. List directly added to this plan. Among the Earth Knights, Marcus Wheeler was rewarded with 20 gold coins for his hard work. Paris was rewarded with 10 gold coins for being unable to be treated differently. Charles Pitfall was rewarded with 15 gold coins for his bravery. Among the Apprentice Knights, Xavier Oxtung was rewarded with 2 gold coins for his cleverness. In the logistics list, the reward for the town's main officer, Gort and Isaiah, was increased to 5 silver coins, and other officials were increased to 2 silver coins. Therefore, the total reward was increased to 170 gold coins. Compared to the mid-level sea monster that could be sold for thousands of gold coins, after deducting the material and labor costs invested and List's personal contribution, these rewards were enough to satisfy all the participants. When the rewards were announced, everyone who participated in the banquet was so excited that they danced with joy. Just 1 battle reward was worth several years of hard work. So war is always the best way for a knight to make a fortune. The knight couldn't wait to go to the battlefield tomorrow to compete for credit and benefits. These emotions were fully released in the banquet that followed. The rich dishes and sufficient wine instantly ignited the atmosphere of the castle. Flower wine, crescent wine, hop beer, fruit wine, and rice wine. With Gort presiding over the banquet, it was never dull. List sat in the main seat, and almost every time he ate a mouthful of food, someone would pick up a glass and toast him and flatter him. Before the hunt, many people were skeptical of his decision. After the hunt, no one dared to question List's decision, leaving only endless respect. Wow. Ella, who loved to join in the fun, never missed such a scene. She ate and drank, adding a lot of joy to the chaotic banquet. When the delicious snake meat was served and everyone had a share, the atmosphere of the banquet reached its climax. Intermediate world of Warcraft, sea monster meat. If it wasn't for List's glory, no one here would have been able to taste it in their entire lives. Now, everyone had a small piece. He held a knife and fork in his hand. Gort trembled with excitement. Oh my God, the glory of the night. I can't believe that one day I can eat the meat of a mid-level sea monster. I'm so happy that it feels like a dream. Isaiah restrained his excitement and said in a pious tone, "If I follow Sir Lord, my dream will come true and I will be able to eat the meat of a mid-level sea monster. I have no doubt that this day will come. I just didn't expect it to come so quickly. Coming to the Flower Town was the best decision I've made in my life." This is just the beginning. Marcus cut a small piece of snake meat and put it in his mouth, chewing it carefully as if it was dragon meat. Following in the footsteps of Sir, countless glories are waving at us. Oh, it's so delicious. There has never been a food that makes me want to cry. Charles, who had just joined the Flower Town for less than 2 days, took several deep breaths before he began to eat. All the imagined beginnings are not as good as the present one. Looking at the followers, they expressed their feelings while eating, as if they were holding a ceremony. List only felt a little funny. There was still more than a ton of 6-headed king sea snake meat in his gem space, enough for him to eat for half a year. However, when the snake meat entered his mouth, the taste was beyond imagination. It was a bit like a lamprey, chewy, without a trace of fishy smell, only delicious. Compared with the land snakes that List had eaten before, the meat was more tender and smooth. Moreover, land snakes were small snakes with many thorns and little meat. The 6-headed king sea snake's thorns were very thick and easy to remove, and the mouth was a delicate piece of meat. It was particularly convenient to eat. Even if they were reluctant to eat it, the crowd quickly wiped out the snake meat, and they could not wait to lick the plate, not wasting any nutrition. After eating the snake meat, there was another wave of flattery. The glory of the night will always bless Flower Town. The glory of the night will always bless Sir Lord. At this dinner, almost everyone was drunk, and the drunkards were sent back to their homes late at night. Even List himself was so drunk that he didn't even remember the habit of bathing every day. He fell asleep on the bed. Strong physique and abundant chi. One night was enough to sober up and adjust the body to its best state. There were many things to do in the new day. The first was to collect the magic of the fire dragon. In one night, the river where enough rubber had been dumped had been completely solidified and messed up. Seeing this, List was a little distressed. I shouldn't have used rubber long ago. Not only did it not trap Yalumita, but it also damaged the vitality of the rubber tree. Now it's distressing to collect a little rubber and build a big house for a chi. The ground had hardened and was about to be baked into stone by the magic of the fire dragon. The pond in front of the small river had become a dammed lake. The river water gathered and spread around, and the original river could no longer be found. The rock thorns still exist, and these stones will be broken by the serfs in the future and brought back. Stone is an important material for construction, which is the daily product of Dosen. It took a whole morning to collect the magic of the fire dragon and put it into the spare fire dragon can. There was no trace of residual fire dragon magic. In the afternoon, the snake blood fruit was watered with snake blood for the second time. The magic eye observation did not find any signs of breeding sprite worms. Then Liz took a chi and the rubber worm triplets and sailed to Black Horse Island on the flowers. A chi was about to enter the sea, and she could no longer stay in the castle. It was foreseeable that in the next period of time, many nobles would visit Flower Town to inquire about the mid-level sea monster. If she stayed, there was a high chance that she would be discovered. A chi, can you keep up with the speed of the flowers in the sea? List asked. Brother, a chi swims very fast. The speed of the flowers is very slow. As long as a chi exerts her strength, she can get rid of the flowers. So a chi entered the sea and followed the flowers. In order to facilitate communication, List had 2 small horns made. As long as he wanted to find the other party, he could blow the horn. As the flowers sailed in the sea, List leaned on the side of the ship and looked at the sea. From time to time, he could see a chi's shell moving rapidly under the sea. It was like a white submarine. Occasionally, it would emerge a little out of the water, and even when he heard a chi blowing the horn in the shell, he would also blow the horn in response. With a relaxed and happy mood, he arrived at Black Horse Island at night. Chapter 336. Overnight, the fire dragon magic was distributed to the kiln of the brick factory. There were a total of 6 kilns in the brick factory, all of which were ignited. In total, only 2 fire dragon jars of fire dragon magic were used. Basically, traditional bricks were no longer fired because there were many basalt pillars on the island. They were dug from the ground to a depth of 1 or 2 meters, all of which were hard stones. There was no shortage of stone. Moreover, the first choice for building a house was wood, which saved a lot of time. Currently, the 6 working kilns were mainly used to experiment with new clay building materials. They had already selected some clever brick-firing workers to study stone slabs, culvert pipes, tiles, and other materials, striving to find a most suitable clay to fire qualified materials. Slate can be used to pave the road. List has long been dissatisfied with the gravel roads of Flower Town. Smooth slate roads are the standard of the aristocracy. Culverts can be used for drainage of sewers, as well as to repair bridges and build running water. It is not needed for the time being, but when he builds the new castle, he will definitely need a complete sewer system. Tiles are used to lay the roof of tiled houses. The roof of a traditional wooden house is made of thatch, straw, and thorns. Once it rains heavily, the room will leak. With tiles laid, the possibility of leakage is greatly reduced, and the thatch will not be blown away on a windy day. The second job of the kiln is to burn charcoal. Charcoal is a fuel used in large quantities by the aristocracy. With these fire dragon kilns, the wood could be neatly stacked, and it only takes a moment to burn the impurities in the wood, and then quickly cool it with water, leaving charcoal. Every time the flower returns to Flower Town, it can bring back a ship of charcoal. Charcoal burned with fire dragon magic. The material is uniform, environmentally friendly, smokeless, and burns fully. It is the best of the best. The Flower Caravan and the Thorns Caravan have begun to sell these charcoal in small quantities. After a short period of time, the workers will be skilled in charcoal firing and can add another specialty. Finally, List is also preparing a calcination technology experimental development group, ready to use the fire dragon kiln to explore calcination technology. Bricks are calcined, pottery is calcined, porcelain is calcined, glass is calcined, cement is calcined, lime is calcined, although List is only master how to calcine bricks, but pottery, porcelain, glass, cement, lime will be studied one by one in the future. In short, the brick factory was just a sign. The real meaning was Calcination Research Center. The next morning, List picked up the horn, mounted Dosen, and went straight to the rocky beach under the lighthouse. Then he blew the horn. Not long after, a large white shell appeared on the surface of the sea, followed by the sound of small horn. After the greetings, List then began a new day of work. He took the triplets to the oak forest. He was preparing to study the special ability of the triplets and restore the vitality of the damaged rubber tree. The worm stalk was already in good condition, and all the cuts it had received had healed. He placed the triplets on a rubber tree that had been cut a few times. Through a telepathic contract, the triplets repaired the rubber tree. Come on, you three little fellows. Try to repair the rubber trees and restore their vitality. Casting magic eyes, he carefully observed their actions. The three rubber worms lined up and began to move on the trunk of the rubber tree. Then, two rubber trees, one on the left and one on the right, climbed to the other sides of the trunk. Hey, these three little fellows actually separated without any external force. List expressed his surprise. Unless someone caught them and separated them, as long as they were placed on the ground, they would crawl together and then line up to act in unison. There had never been any active separation. However, before List could finish his surprise, the rubber worms, which had formed a triangle formation on the three sides of the trunk, suddenly trembled with magic power. A circle of shock waves centered on them spread in all directions. In the vision of the magic eyes, the shock waves began to spread in circles in the form of magic ripples. When they encountered a rubber tree, they would also ignite the rubber tree's magic power, outlining the rubber tree's appearance. Then, with the rubber tree as the center, a new magic ripple was emitted. The ripples spread further and further, and soon, the entire rubber forest was filled with ripples of magic power. The strong visual impact made List dumbfounded. He never knew that magic could be used like this. When he withdrew his gaze from the gradually dissipating magic ripples, the damaged parts of the rubber tree in front of him had quickly healed under the stimulation of magic power. Within a few minutes, the magic ripples gradually faded, and all the damaged rubber trees returned to normal. There was no sign of being cut at all. Incredible! List checked the rubber trees one by one and found that every rubber tree was intact. This is like cheating. Suddenly, through the telepathic connection, he transmitted the exhaustion of the three rubber worms. After releasing such a miracle, they seemed very tired. He hurriedly asked his valet to bring a jade box, put the triplets into the jade box, and sprinkled enough jade powder on them to let them have a good nourishment. Now, these three rubber worms had become List's favorite. He originally thought that it was too wasteful to have only one worm stalk for three rubber worms. Only now did he realize that the elves were magical creatures that couldn't be speculated with common sense. They were always able to amaze people. After putting away the sprite worm, List suddenly thought, I wonder if the rubber trees outside the rubber garden have also been restored? So he rode Dosen to the pasture, changed to the king of the black blood horses, and began to inspect the rubber trees on the island one by one. The young rubber trees were transplanted to the rubber garden, and the big rubber trees could not be transplanted, so they could only grow in the wild. However, he felt a little regretful. On the first rubber tree in the wild, the cut was very clear. It had not been treated by the rubberworm triplets. It meant that the special magic released by the rubberworm triplets only worked on the rubber trees within the range of influence. Or rather, the magic waves could be overlapped to produce a healing effect. Rubber trees beyond this range would not be able to enjoy the buff of the rubberworm. Fend for themselves. If that's the case, does every rubber tree in the wild have to use the tripartite power? He called the ability of the triplets the tripartite power. If that was the case, the triplets would be exhausted to death. However, the smoke mission seemed to only require him to find out the special ability of the triplets and did not require him to repair the rubber trees. Therefore, List directly summoned the smoke mission. The lingering smoke formed a serpentine. Mission completed. Reward: an apple tree sprite worm. Sure enough, the mission was completed after finding out the tripartite power of the triplets. Moreover, the reward was an apple tree sprite worm. The first thing that came to List's mind was the apple tree not far from the castle gate. Chapter 337. The birth of the apple tree sprite worm made List think of too many stories at once. It won't take long for this to become a topic of conversation among aristocrats in Flower Town and even Coral Island after Blizzard Beast Trembling Woods, the Thorn Sprite, and the six-headed King Sea Serpent. Even after countless years, the world will change. Archaeologists will dig out a piece of wood from the ground and solemnly tell the young people, "This is the branch of the apple tree that changed the world." The Holy Dragon Knight, the Lord of the Dragon Domain, the Emperor of Thorns, the King of Sirens, the Master of Rubber, the Dog Tamer. The apple tree planted by List Tulip himself. He and his followers sit under the tree and dominate the world. In the curious eyes of the young people, the archaeologist held an ancient book Dragon War in the wild and sang like a bard. Thorn Emperor, List, ordered by the heavens, live forever. The above was purely a fantasy of List's imagination. In fact, after the new mission was issued, he forgot these fantasies, opened his mouth, and was shocked speechless. Happiness came too suddenly. Mission. With the gradual increase in business between Black Horse Island and Flower Town, it is difficult for a flower to cope with the busy transportation. As the Lord, it is necessary to solve the problem. Please purchase a medium-sized seagoing ship. Reward: a sprite. He couldn't believe what he saw, so he closed his eyes, rubbed them hard, and called out the smoke mission again. The mission reward was still written, a sprite, instead of a sprite worm. A real sprite, as long as you buy a new ship. You can get it. It's a bit unacceptable, too sudden. Why don't you just give me a sprite instead of 5 or 6 chain missions? List always felt that with the nature of the smoke mission, it was difficult to directly draw out the sprite, because smoke missions cannot produce rewards out of thin air. It is through the power of fate that a needle is threaded to present a reward. It is conceivable how many threads of fate need to be changed to draw out a sprite. However, when he took a deep breath and calmed down, he realized that he had made a mistake. For the power of destiny, it did not need to lift a stone at all. It only needed to find a fulcrum and gently move it to change the entire stone, or even pry up an entire earth. If there is an elf around Flower Town and Black Horse Island, can it be moved by the smoke task and then used as a task reward? With that in mind, everything suddenly became clear. Thinking back to the smoke mission, even the invisible dragon was drawn over. It was evident how magical the power of fate was. The initial excitement slowly subsided. List steadied his emotions, turned his horse around, and headed straight for Port Town. He didn't want to stay on Black Horse Island for a moment longer. He just wanted to return to Flower Town and buy a new boat with the help of Tulip Castle. Teacher Marcus, I will leave the affairs of Black Horse Island to you. The rubber trees in the rubber garden have been restored and rubber can be collected again. You should organize serfs to collect a batch as soon as possible. I need to build a house in Flower Town. Yes, my lord. There was nothing else to explain. Seeing that it was still early, he directly ordered Captain Costo to go out to sea again and return to Flower Town. A small horn sounded. Soon, a horn sounded in response. Liz sat on the bow of the ship and saw a white shadow emerging under the sea. It was a chief following him. He leaned on Dosen's back, and his thoughts were like a wild horse out of control, galloping to his heart's content. I don't know what kind of elf it is. It should be a wild elf. I didn't find any signs of my sprite worms evolving. Of his 12 sprite worms, 8 were bred in the past year and did not have much time to develop, so there were fewer signs of breakthrough. Liz took them to assimilate a batch of crops and collect pheromones, but it took time to grow. The other 4 sprite worms, corn worm, wheat worm, tulip worm, and alfalfa worm, were all given to him by the count. There was also a thorn worm, which had evolved into a sprite, Ella. Corn worm, wheat worm, alfalfa worm, and tulip worm, there should be no possibility of evolution. They are not very good quality sprite worms. Therefore, the new sprite was very likely to be wild. Since it was wild, it was hard to guarantee its species. It was very likely that it was a useless little sprite. That was because most of the plants in the wild were plants that were difficult to develop. The truly valuable ones had long been tamed by humans and cultivated on a large scale. Of course, no matter what kind of useless sprite it was, even if it was just a weed sprite for list, weeds could at least be used for greening. His thoughts flew. He still couldn't guess the sprite's breed and how it was obtained. He withdrew his thoughts and began to think about the special ability of the rubberworm triplets discovered today, the power of 3 phases. This could definitely be called a kind of magic, according to the different properties. Humans categorized magic power into 8 types: water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, ice, and darkness. However, it was clear that magic power did not only consist of these 8 types. Most of them were chaos attributes, which were attributes that did not manifest as any other attributes. Liszt had Red Knight novels and magic books that referred to the magic power of the sprites as natural magic power, or it could also be called wood magic power, because it could control plants. Ella's method of sowing thorn seeds could be regarded as a kind of wood magic. Therefore, the power of 3 phases of the rubberworm triplets should also be regarded as wood magic. In fact, there are some people who regarded the magic power of dragons as a new kind of magic power, metal magic power. Needless to say, metal dragons could produce metal at any time. Of course, it could be called metal magic power. Although gem dragons did not produce metal but gems, their production method was the same as metal dragons. Therefore, it was also called metal magic power by a few humans. Although the magic power of elemental dragons had the attributes of water, fire, earth, and wind, its ability to infect the surroundings was obviously different from that of ordinary magic power. It could barely be called metal magic power. According to this view, the sacred dragon also had metal magic power. The wood attribute represents nature, and the metal attribute represents infection and creation. I always feel that this division is very far-fetched. It is as if different kinds of people have to be divided into 4 categories: tall, short, fat, and thin. Liszt shook his head. He did not support this division. The fire dragon should be of the fire attribute. Why should it be classified as a metal attribute? Like a siren, she had unusual magic power, but she had an affinity with the water attribute and should be classified as a water attribute creature. The fire dragon naturally had extraordinary magic power, but it released fire magic power, so it should naturally be classified as a fire attribute creature. In short, there are thousands of extraordinary manifestations of magic power. There's no need to stick to which attribute it is. The power of 3 phases is magic formed by magical magic power. It was not clear yet. This was unique to the rubberworm, or the triplet sprite worms. Liszt believed that he would have this type of sprite worm in the future. Chapter 338. In the evening, he arrived at the Port of Flowers. After confirming that Chi had returned to the seaside, Liszt returned directly to the castle and began to count how many gold coins he had. The result was that if he did not sell his fixed assets, he could probably only gather 100 gold coins. The flower wine market has not yet fully opened, and it is difficult to raise many gold coins in a short time. This money is not enough to buy a medium-sized ship. I have to prepare at least 500 gold coins. The first generation of Sapphire Grand Duke Andrew Sapphire had not yet created the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, and human beings living on the mainland had not yet entered the age of navigation. Ships were mostly powered by oars, poles, and oars. They sailed in inland lakes and rivers and rarely even appeared offshore. It is not known when the sail was invented. It is estimated that if you want to trace it back, it will be traced back to the Moon Empire. All the cultural sources of the world can be related to the Moon Empire. But sailing must have been carried forward by the Grand Duchy of Sapphire because it was the first human country to be established on the island. There was a lack of serfs, food, and minerals on the island. Everything had to be snatched from the mainland. Small inland boats, such as oars, could not withstand the wind and waves. Sailing ships became the main force of navigation. Driven by war, sailing ships developed rapidly between the archipelagos in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Basically, oars have been eliminated here. Only sailing ships are being built and sold. There are currently 3 classes of sailing ships: small one-masted sailing ships, medium-sized 2-masted sailing ships, and large 3-masted sailing ships. Sails are all horizontal sails. Of course, in the era before longitudinal sails were invented, they were all uniformly called sails. Only Liszt would distinguish them by horizontal sails. The sail of a one-masted sailing ship, more accurately known as a square sail, is a bit similar to the kind of sailing ship used by the Vikings, with a huge square sail hanging on it. The sail of a 2-masted sailing ship is composed of small horizontal sails, and the same is true of a 3-masted sailing ship. These 3 classes of sailing ships are divided into 3 types: cargo ships, ordinary ships, and fast ships. Cargo ships are very spacious, and the cargo holds are huge, but they move very slowly. Fast ships are narrow, and the cargo holds are small, but they move very fast. Ordinary ships are a combination of the two, neither big nor small, neither fast nor slow. The Flower is an ordinary 2-masted sailing ship. It is distinguished according to the cost of a popular ship. An ordinary sailing ship is between 50 and 200 gold coins. A cargo ship is between 100 and 300 gold coins. A fast sailing ship is between 200 and 400 gold coins. An ordinary brig was worth between 500 and 1,000 gold coins, while the Flower was worth at least 500 gold coins. The brig was worth between 800 and 1,200 gold coins, while the brig was worth between 1,000 and 1,500 gold coins. A 3-masted sailing ship is between 2,000 and 3,000 gold coins. A 3-masted sailing ship is between 2,500 and 3,000 gold coins. A 3-masted sailing ship is between 2,500 to 4,000 gold coins. A fast sailing ship is between 5,000 and 6,000 gold coins. At present, only the Sapphire clan could manufacture fast 3-masted sailboats, and they were not sold to the public for use as warships. March of Mare March. Marrying, March of the Maris Marquis. Of Marcus. Marcus of the Marquis. Marcus Marcus. Marcus. Marcus of Mars. Of Marcus Price. The Marcus Marcus the Marcus. The Ming Sea. A Marcus. A Marwas. Furthermore, it was just a temporary shortage of funds. Flower Brew can still earn back a few hundred gold coins a month. Simply use the income of Flower Brew to advance the income of the next few weeks from Tulip Castle in advance. Thinking of this, he immediately wrote to Levis and asked Gort to take the letter to Tulip Castle. Consulting Gort, I hope you can follow the caravan and choose a suitable ordinary 2-masted sailing ship. The price is not too high. We only sail between Black Horse Island and Flower Town. Sir, are you going to ask the shipyard to build a new ship, or are you going to buy a medium-sized sailboat? Gort took the letter and asked. Of course Liz wanted to say, of course it was to buy a new ship. But he suddenly remembered that the Smoke Mission only asked him to buy another medium-sized seagoing ship. It neither required a newly built seagoing ship, nor did it require it to be a cargo ship or an ordinary ship. In that case, why not buy an old ship? The Flower was an old ship that had been mended, but it ran smoothly on the sea without any problems. Especially recently, the gaps in the ship's deck have been watered with rubber water, making the Flower stronger and more stable. There was no sign of leakage, and it could sail for at least another 10 years. Buy an old ship, sew it up, and put some rubber water on it, and it can be used as a new ship. So he temporarily changed his mind. Then buy an old ship and keep the price within 500 gold coins. Gort smiled and said, Sir, coincidentally, I recently heard news that the caravan of Tulip Castle is going to replace a new batch of ships, which is related to Flower Town's specialty flower brew. Mr. Frank told me that Sir Levis is going to set up a special wine fleet and buy fast-sailing ships to replace several cargo ships. Liquor is expensive, and using fast-sailing ships can reduce sailing time and transport risks. Is that so? If that's the case, then choose a relatively better cargo ship from this batch and buy it. As you wish, sir. Gort went to buy a ship. It will take a few days, and these days, the castle is going to tear down the Shellwood building and repair it back to its original appearance. As for List, he rarely stays in the castle because the news of the six-headed king Sea Snake has spread and the nobles of North Valley City have come to visit. He is very impatient to receive these nobles. They have nothing in common to talk about except eating and drinking. So he gave all the reception tasks to Zambrata. Apart from Gort, Zambrata is the only one with good diplomatic skills in Flower Town. As a noble who has been deprived of his title, he is not good at practical work, but he is very skilled at practical work. He also has an important task, which is to reject all requests to buy mid-level sea monster materials. All the materials of the six-headed king sea snake are not for sale. List, who is not bothered by the paperwork, is building a seaside villa with a peace of mind. After the ebb of the tide, a pit of 500 square meters was dug on the beach, filled with a lot of rocks and sand, and mixed with rubber water to stir. The sun shone. The solidification speed was very fast, and in a few hours, a platform similar to a cement platform was built. The beach is soft, and the foundation is not deep, but the platform is large enough and strong enough, so is still very stable and is not affected by the scouring of the sea after the high tide. On the platform, a stone house continues to be built. This stone house will be submerged by the sea at high tide, allowing a chi to enter and exit freely. A wooden house continues to be built on the upper level of the stone house for Liz to live in. A chi can also read books and study magic along the steps, taking potions, practicing chi, listening to the sirens sing. Chapter 339. List was so intent on supervising the construction of the Sea View Villa that he even trained the dogs at the seaside. Only when his sister Olvera came, he received her and reluctantly cut off a small piece of snakeskin and sold it to her to make leather armor for 50 gold coins. It was equivalent to a half sell price. After getting a piece of mid-level sea monster snakeskin to make leather armor, Olvera left happily. He continued to supervise the construction of the Sea View Villa, a two-story structure. Stone houses, wooden houses were built very quickly. It has to be said that the effect of rubber was too powerful. Jormea rammed Earth, who was promoted to the only architect of Black Horse Island, tried his best to complete List's ideas. List was not an architect, so he did not consider any mechanical structure at all. Jormea needed to carefully consider whether the layout of each wall could withstand the weight of the top floor. But fortunately, it was only a two-story villa. There was also an elevated boardwalk, which ran from the Sea View Villa to a place where the high tide could not submerge. All of them were ironwood thorns, which were not afraid of the erosion of blisters, and then glued with rubber water, hanging high on the beach, which could be described as a bridge hundreds of meters long. Looking at the Sea View house that was taking shape little by little, Liz could not help but think of a few words: rich, capricious. Such a Sea View house consumed a huge amount of manpower and material resources that ordinary nobles could not afford. That is, List's own territory was rich in resources: rubber, ironwood, stone, sand, all of which could be said to be free. The serfs worked for only 1 or 2 copper coins a day. Moreover, it was luxurious to use rubber to build a house. Paving bridges, roads, and building houses should never be the main use of such items with strategic value. When the Sea View Villa was completely built, it was already the middle of April. The magic in the bodies of the 8 little ones was getting more and more abundant, and they could release magic at any time. This time, with the presence of their father, Dosin, as a demonstration, there was no need for Liz to guide them to release magic. However, they still had to be trained strictly when it came to releasing magic. Storm, flame, rock, waves, thunder, light, ice, shadow line up. List stood on the beach and carried out today's blizzard beast formation training. The 8 little ones stood in a row, one by one, staring at List. List was very satisfied with the speed at which they lined up. They could already line up one by one in a very short period of time. Everyone sit down. The 8 little ones immediately sat down and stuck out their tongues, waiting for the next order. Starting from a storm, count off. Woof, 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 ah, woof, 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 woof. 7 blizzard beasts made an accurate woof, but one of them made a meaningless wolf cry, which made List very angry. Waves, come out. Botao's ears drooped as he walked out. List ordered again with a cold face. Stand aside. Botao did not dare to disobey. So he ran to the beach dejectedly and watched aggrievedly as List began to give the other 7 blizzard beasts a piece of jerky. His saliva flowed down, but he did not dare to have any protest because it would bring more serious punishment. Farther away, Dosen was lying on the sand in the sun, and Stupid Woman was snuggling next to him. Now that Stupid Woman has been completely tamed, she can occasionally be pulled out to let out some air, but she has missed the period of good training. Now, it could no longer receive orders and could only reluctantly be pulled by others without hurting them. In other words, it was just a breeding tool for Tremblingwoods. The big wolfhound in the kennel has been isolated from Dosen's reproduction. Stupid Woman is the last hope, but it seems that Stupid Woman should also have reproductive isolation. After giving birth to 8 little ones, she mated with Dosen several times. Unfortunately, there was no movement in her stomach. If you want to continue to cultivate blizzard beasts, I'm afraid it will be against ethics and adopt inbreeding, so that 5 males and 3 females can pair with each other, or Dosen can also participate. On Earth, many purebred dogs are bred by inbreeding, so that son to mother, daughter to father, brother to sister, sister to sister, or grandfather to granddaughter, to maintain the purity of the offspring breed. List has seen documentaries about this situation, and most purebred dogs have serious health problems. So from the beginning, List had no intention of inbreeding. The wolfhounds bred in the kennel are used to vent their animal desires. As for reproductive isolation, there may be a way to solve it in the future. 2 hours after training, he dismissed the 8 little ones. The servants behind him each led 2 blizzard beasts back to the castle and tied them back to the kennel. Stupid Woman was also led away. The dog prison has been demolished, and she has a separate new kennel. Only Dosen can stay and follow List. Obedience to instructions is deeply engraved in his mind. He never hurts people indiscriminately, so he is rarely chained. Along the elevated boardwalk, List went straight to the seascape villa. On the rocking chair in the wooden house on the 2nd floor, the siren Chi was holding a magic book and reading it very intently. She raised her head when she heard the movement and smiled sweetly. "Brother, you are here. How have you been living in the sea these days?" "I'm not used to it. It's more comfortable to live in a house," Chi said seriously. "I used to hide in a shell alone in the sea. Now that I have a house, it's like I have a small world of my own. Thank you, brother, for giving Chi a big house." Perhaps this is women. They have a natural preference for houses. It may also be the attraction of civilization. The original human beings also lived in the wild and caves. Until the development of civilization, no one wanted to go to the wild and live in caves. Have you mastered the water wheel wall? Well, brother, look. Chi put down the magic book, waved her palm gently, and a round water disc immediately appeared in front of her. The water disc rotated like a wheel. The high-speed rotation of the water can form a very strong defensive shield, which can block the impact of an instant explosion. List pulled out the red blood sword and tested the strength of the water wheel wall. He found that it was indeed strong and had an elasticity that pushed the red blood sword outward. Judging from his experience, he would need to use at least 1 fighting skill to break this water wheel wall. Chi was now becoming more and more scholarly and continued to explain. According to the information summarized in the magic books, Chi read, "The water wheel wall and the water whirlpool are the decomposition forms of the higher-level water wave shield. Qi is already learning the water whirlpool. After learning it, she can almost study the water wave shield. That's amazing, my Qi. Liz gave a thumbs up. The immature little siren was now going to attack the great magician. He no longer disturbed Qi's magic study, but set up a small magic fire dragon. The seaside house was relatively humid. He intended to use the burning effect of the magic fire dragon to dispel the moisture and keep the room dry. It was also to create a good environment for taking potions, limited to one room. After all, the magic fire dragon was equivalent to a heater. It was going to be summer soon, and people would die from the heat. After taking the potions, he recorded the data and felt refreshed. Liz said goodbye to the siren, ate Qi, and returned to the castle for lunch. Qi, who had been reading magic books for a long time, stretched, ate a few raspberries, then returned to the shell and swam to the sea. She liked to swim in the sea in the afternoon to wash her body and mind. Chapter 340. The second ship of Flower Town came quickly. It was a big, fat, two-masted sailboat with a half-new hull and a mended sail. The flower had just returned from transporting charcoal and was moored in the flower port, making the best comparison with the sailboat. The width was about twice that of the flower, and the length was basically the same. The sail of the mast was also wider and looked fatter than the flower. However, its bow was also wide and not as sharp as the bow of the flower. With such a shape, the speed could not be fast. The flower could reach a speed of 7 knots, but its speed was limited to 5 knots. It was estimated that it would take 15 or 16 hours to cross Flower Town and Black Horse Island. They would set off before dawn and would only arrive after dark. "Sir, I bought it." Gort jumped off the ship excitedly and quickly rushed to Liz to report. It cost a total of 340 gold coins. This barley has been running for 2.5 years without any accidents. It is of good quality in all aspects. Comparing several cargo ships, the barley is the most suitable. Captain Costo of the Flower, after a careful inspection, agreed with Gort's statement. "Sir, this barley is really good. It is worth 340 gold coins." Liz did not know much about ships, but he was basically satisfied with the barley. The overall framework of the cargo ship was good. With a little repair, it could definitely be made into a new ship. He thought about it and said, "The barley does not fit the temperament of Flower Town. Change it to thorns." Thorns were a specialty of Flower Town and the first species of sprite. Naming it after thorns was in line with the characteristics of Flower Town and directly pointed out the glory of the Lord. The task of repairing the thorns will be handed over to Captain Costo. In addition, you have to train a qualified new captain and a sufficient number of sailors as soon as possible. In the future, the Flower Town will not only have these 2 ships. I need more captains and sailors. Costo said excitedly. Yes, sir, Costo is willing to help. Sailing was his dream. Leading a ship to sail and leading a fleet to sail were 2 very different realms. He looked forward to the day when the fleet of flowers would sail across the sea, and he firmly believed that this day would not be too far away. In the near future, the great Lord will bring it all. Liz did not waste any more time at the port. After receiving thorns, he returned to the castle. He then summoned the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward: 1 mangrove sprite. Mission complete. The elf was also rewarded. Although he didn't know where it was, seeing the 2 serpentines of mangrove, he already knew where he had to go to find the elf. It was a subsidiary island of Black Horse Island, Mangrove Island. However, there didn't seem to be much surprise. He seemed to be a little disappointed. Mangrove fairies. Is it a mangrove? It's a common tree by the sea. What was the use of the mangroves that formed the mangrove forest? Preserve the ecological environment? Liz sighed faintly in his heart. True enough, the reward obtained without a chain mission couldn't be expected to be good. Compared to the thorn lesser sprite that could produce potions and ironwood, the mangrove lesser sprite was much weaker. When he passed by the mangrove forest, he circled it carefully and did not find any signs of magic. This meant that there was no magic potion. Mangroves were mostly miscellaneous trees with little value to collect. In addition, they could not produce potions. It could be seen that the mangrove lesser sprite was indeed a bit useless. I can't be so arbitrary. After all, I haven't investigated it clearly. Maybe there will be potions produced in the depths of Mangrove Island. I only looked at the periphery and didn't even find a mangrove lesser sprite's worm stalk. It should be growing in the depths of the mangrove forest on the island. So how can I capture and contract it? No matter how useless the lesser sprite was, it was still a lesser sprite. It would be a huge surprise if it mutated into a new potion species one day. Therefore, List put away his disappointment and cheered up. He was ready to sail to Mangrove Island immediately to find a mangrove lesser sprite and contract it. However, the mangrove forest was difficult to climb, and it was even more difficult to find a mangrove lesser sprite. By the way, I could bring Chi along. She's a siren and can come and go freely in the sea. Maybe she can help me search the mangrove forest and find a mangrove lesser sprite. He immediately ran to the beach to look for a Chi. However, he did not forget to take a look at the new smoke mission. Mission: drinking delicious high-quality cows every day. Have you forgotten that the construction of the dairy farm and the cultivation of black blood horses require a lot of nutrients? Please continue to plant 500 mu of corngrass. Reward for dragon-type cows. After browsing the new mission, List's mouth raised into a smile. Sure enough, they're dragon-type cows, or rather, the cow's pregnant calves were infected by the invisible dragon and became dragon-type cows. 3 of the cows were pregnant when the invisible dragon invaded. So, one of them is pregnant with twins? Cows, similar to humans, generally only give birth to 1 calf at a time. Twins and triplets are rare phenomena. However, although these 4 calves are dragon-type cows, their mothers, Big Yellow, Big Flower, and Big Black, should also be partially infected. Otherwise, the quality of their milk would not be so good. The same is true for Little Flower and Little Black. Their milk is also of high quality. The original 9 cows on the dairy farm are probably infected. Milk Flower, Milk Yellow, and Milk Black are also about to mature and are ready to become pregnant and produce milk. When they are ready, he will know if they are infected and how their milk quality is. The male cow, Xianxia, should also be infected, and the calves produced by its mating should improve their physique. In the foreseeable future, the flower farm will become a high-quality milk source, providing List with a steady stream of nutrients. I still need to plant another 500 mu of corngrass. I remember that all the wastelands in the barley settlement are full. The cornfield should be expanded to 100 mu and the corngrass to 280 mu. Then I will plant another 500 mu of corngrass in the Thorns Ridge. Unfortunately, I can't enjoy the blessing of the corngrass worm. While thinking, he had already arrived at the Sea View Villa. When he was about to take out the horn and call the siren a Chi, he suddenly found that a Chi was reading a book in the Sea View Villa. Without waiting for List to speak, a Chi jumped up in joy. "Brother, you're finally here. A Chi has been waiting for you for a long time." "Waiting for me? For something?" List asked curiously. "Uh-huh." A Chi nodded happily, then waved to her shell downstairs. "Little girl, come out." "Little girl?" Did he pick up another little siren? List froze for a moment. Then he saw a little thing fly out of the shell of the stone house and fly up the stairs. It was a palm-sized fairy with a pair of translucent wings. The elf was a little afraid of List. She hid in a Chi's blue hair and buried herself. At this moment, Chapter 341. The light green mangrove elf was indeed picked up by a Chi on Mangrove Island. When a Chi was playing on Mangrove Island, she found this little girl. It was so small and cute, just like Ella, but it was very timid. I threw the fruit to it to eat, and it hesitated for a long time before picking it up. Then it gradually approached me and bit my finger. A Chi described her experience with a mangrove elf in detail. At that time, a Chi suddenly found herself establishing a contract with the little girl, and she could understand what it was thinking. Brother, is this a contract between humans and elves? So sirens can also contract with elves? You contracted it? List was surprised. This was the elf rewarded to him by the smoke mission, but unexpectedly contracted with the siren Chi. Although Chi was also his personal possession, it was not a personal contract, which was a little uncomfortable. But soon he put away his selfishness, nodded, and said gently, basically, elves only contract with humans, but it doesn't mean that elves can't contract with other creatures. After all, this is not a magic contract invented by humans. So it is not surprising that sirens can contract elves. Is that so? Chi tilted her head. But I don't know how to take care of the elf. Brother, why don't Chi cancel the contract with the little girl and you contract it? Its wormstalk is a mangrove tree, right in the middle of Mangrove Island, and the surrounding trees bear many small fruits, which are delicious. List was tempted. List immediately rejected it. Since it took the initiative to contract with you, it is destined to be with you. I don't need to waste its contract times. Yours and mine are the same. Did you bring the fruit of the mangrove tree? I brought some. She waved her hand, and the seawater in the shell immediately held a handful of light yellow fruit and placed it in List's hand. The fruit had no magic power. It was just an ordinary fruit, crooked in shape, and the size was about the size of a thumbnail. List pinched one into his mouth and chewed it twice. It was a little sweet and sour, and it tasted delicious. It could probably be treated as a fruit. This may be the greatest value of the mangrove elf at present. He could only hope to encounter the magic medicine mangrove in the future, or mutate a more valuable species of mangrove. Chi, did you name it? List asked as he looked at the elf who had poked its head out of Chi's hair and was looking at him curiously. Unlike Ella's rough and careless image, it looked more delicate, and its color was crystal clear like jade. There were 2 small green leaves and a small red flower on the top of his head. Her big eyes blinked, appearing extremely pure. It made a sound like a little girl talking to herself. Goo. No wonder Chi called a little girl. Brother, I've been thinking for a long time, but I still can't think of a name for it. Why don't you get a name? Let me. List didn't refuse. After thinking for a while, he had an idea. Let's call it Nami. Nami, yes. This name represents the summoning of the tides. Nami, well, let's call it Nami. It's a nice name. Chi pulled the mangrove elf out of her hair and placed her on her palm. Little girl, your name is Nami from now on. Do you understand? The little elf called out timidly. Jigu. She accepted her new name, Nami. Chi, since Nami is already your contracted elf, you should take good care of it. I will give you a jade box and some jade powder to feed it. Then every time you go to the mangrove forest, pay attention to the attributes of the mangrove, worm, fungus, and figure out the role of those mangroves. The siren nodded. Chi understands. Nami will definitely help brother and play the role of an elf. She had read a lot of books and knew the value of elves to humans. Wait here for a while. I'll bring Ella over and let it meet Nami. Okay. After a while, the sound of horse hooves could be heard. List had brought Ella over. After seeing Chi, Ella was very happy and repeatedly cried, wow, wow. It hadn't seen the siren for several days. At this time, from Chi's hair, Nami poked her head again. Suddenly, the 2 elves met for the first time. Ella was stunned. It flapped its wings and stared at Nami in a daze. No one knew what it was thinking. It was not the first time it had seen its kind. It had seen it in Tulip Castle. Nami was seeing its kind for the first time. She stood on Chi's shoulder and waved her hand, looking at Ella. She greeted softly, Jigu. 10 seconds later, Ella reacted and flew over to Nami. List watched the interaction of the 2 little guys with a smile on his face. He felt that such a picture was really beautiful. However, the next moment his smile stopped abruptly. He saw Ella fly to Nami, raise her little hand, and directly slap Nami's head. Wow, her emotions were strong. List immediately sensed that she was telling Nami to get out. Nami was directly slapped by this slap and fell from Chi's shoulder. Fortunately, Chi reacted in time and separated a water belt to catch Nami. Falling on the hose, Nami bursts into tears. Ella, List hurriedly shouted, "Stop it." After listening, Ella put her hands on her waist and swaggered in the air. She shouted wow to List and wow to Ichi, as if to show how powerful she was. When she saw List, she glared. She flattened her mouth and flew back to his shoulder, not daring to make trouble. On the other side, Ichi had already held Nami and comforted her softly. "Don't cry, Nami. Ella didn't mean it. It's usually very cute. I believe you will become good friends." This was not a happy meeting. After Ichi's comfort, Nami no longer cried, but hid in her hair and never showed her head again. Compared to Ella's boldness, she was really timid. "Take care of Nami." List didn't know what to say, so he simply took Ella back. Along the way, Ella was naturally scolded and punished. She was not allowed to leave the worm room for 3 days. If she hits another elf next time, the punishment will be doubled. In the face of such punishment, Ella looked dispirited all the way. She was too active, and confinement was a nightmare for her. Moreover, there was no warm shell to bathe in the worm room. When he returned to the castle, the town's administrative officer, Isaiah, just arrived. "Sir, what can I do for you?" Ella was handed over to Butler Carter to be sent to the worm room. Liz said, "I intend to expand 500 acres of corn grass. See if there are any wastelands that can be cultivated and immediately arrange serfs to cultivate them. Now it is past the spring plowing season, and the cultivation should be completed as soon as possible. We already have 280 acres of corn grass. According to the arrangement at the beginning of the year, it is enough for Flower Town to use. Why do we still need to cultivate 500 acres? Because I intend to expand the scale of cattle and horses." "As you wish." Isaiah took the order and left. Mrs. Morrison brewed milk tea, and Carter brought it to List. Picking up the teacup and taking a sip of fragrant milk tea, List's mixed emotions were well calmed. Anyway, the territory's second elf has been obtained. Chapter 342. Just like Ichi, List didn't want to expose Nami at this moment. Although the true benefits of the smoke mission were not known, the exposed parts were already scary enough. If he continued to expose himself, it would be beyond the scope of the knight's glorious blessing. List was a cautious person and would continue to keep a low profile. For example now, hiding in the castle's flower bed, he quietly watered 20 pots of snake blood fruit with the blood of the six-headed sea snake king. When most of the snake blood was used up, 4 of the pots of snake blood fruit had a magical reaction and successfully bred snake blood fruit sprite worms. Another 4 sprite worms. I feel that this year will be a bumper harvest. List stopped watering the snake blood fruit potted with snake blood. In the future, he only needed to fertilize the sprite worms and provide them with sufficient nutrition. There was no need to waste the snake blood. The snake blood was mainly concentrated on watering the remaining 16 pots of snake blood fruit. However, after 2 days of continuous watering, the remaining snake blood fruit pots still had no reaction. Another day of watering, and still no reaction. It seems that the snake blood fruits that should have produced sprite worms should have been produced long ago. As for those that cannot be produced, there is no point in continuing. List took measures to promptly cut off the losses, decisively intercepting the remaining quarter of the snake blood. He stored it and waited for the next use. In his mind, perhaps a few years later, the snake blood sprite worms would begin to evolve, and the snake blood would come in handy to help them transform again. However, he suddenly thought, a few years later, he might be riding a dragon. It would be easy to hunt a sea snake monster. Why should he keep the snake blood and waste the area of a gem space? So, he decided to divide the snake blood into 2, one to continue watering 1 pot of snake blood fruit to see if it could produce new sprite worms, and the other to eat. Mid-level sea monster snake blood was a great tonic, and the effect was remarkable. Recently, he had found the safest way to take the least amount of medicine and get the greatest effect. Coupled with the meat of the mid-level sea monster, his total chi rose steadily, breaking through almost every day. Compared to when I killed the 6-headed sea snake king, My total chi has increased by 2/3. Speaking of which, I can now fight 4 Marcus at once, right? Marcus had already become the standard unit of measurement for his strength. Could it be shortened to the strength of 4 horses? This method of calculation was very unscientific, but there was really no better reference. On the Coral Island, there were not many elite Earth Knights that could fight against List. The 2 Viscounts, Yunas and Trick, should be a bit stronger than List. After all, they were the veteran representatives of the Poison Stream. In addition, there was the elite knight squad under the Coral Islands Orders of Chivalry. Among them, there were a few knights that were half drug addicts and half combat skill users. They could fight evenly with List. After that, his brother, Levis, and Brandon Gravel, the heir of Gravel Castle, also took drugs, but their strength was definitely not as good as List's. Not every elite Earth Knight of the Potion Stream could afford to spend the money on potions. As for those who could afford the potions, like Levis and Brandon, they had not grasped the scientific method of taking potions, nor did they have dragon milk or mid-level sea monster meat to supplement themselves. Later, I will find an opportunity to spar with the elites of the Orders of Chivalry and test my fighting strength. Under the apple tree, on the rocking chair, List cancel magic eyes. The apple tree in front of him had already given birth to a sprite worm, which was among the flowers on the branches above the apple table. This convinced List that the birth of the apple sprite worm was likely due to his influence on it at all times. Magic power, matter, spirit. It's probably the triangular theory studied by wizards. He did not understand much about it, nor did he want to understand it. He only needed to understand that he already had 17 sprite worms. 1 peanut sprite worm, 1 alfalfa sprite worm, 1 tulip sprite worm, 1 corn sprite worm, 1 wheat sprite worm, 1 tomato sprite worm, 1 fragrant coconut sprite worm, 1 black nightshade sprite worm, 1 corngrass sprite worm, 3 rubber sprite worms, for snake blood fruit sprite worms, and 1 apple sprite worm. In the beginning, he only had 4 sprite worms. 1 year later, he had 2 lesser sprites, 17 sprite worms, and 9 mid-level World of Warcraft worms. He was very satisfied with this harvest. Even Tulip Castle, from the Viscount era until now, had only accumulated 1 greater sprite, 12 lesser sprites, and 100 sprite worms. With 1 town and 1 year's worth of time, what was there to be dissatisfied with? He exercised his wrists, got up, and said, "Philip, give me the bow and arrows." "Yes, sir." The retainer knight Philip Wool immediately handed over the bow and arrows. List stood under the apple tree, aiming at the distant target, and began to practice multiple arrows. Now, he was not only a powerful elite great knight, but also a brilliant sharpshooter. He understood the principle of hard work makes waste. In order to increase his strength, he practiced fighting skills and archery every day, turning them into his instincts. Just like that, April passed by with continuous harvests. The weather was getting hotter and hotter, and the spring seedlings sprouted quickly. When May arrived, the serfs had already replanted 500 mu of corn grass, and the smoke mission was quickly completed. Mission completed. Reward for dragon cows. Meanwhile, the good news of the dairy farm quickly spread to the castle. Big Yellow, one of the 3 cows, was the first to give birth to a healthy calf. It was a female calf and could produce milk. Liz circled around the calf, looking at it left and right, feeling very excited. On the 3rd day, Big Black also began to give birth. It was a bit difficult to give birth to twins in its belly. It took half a day for the birth to be successfully completed, giving birth to a male and a female calf. Then the next week, Big Flower, who had not moved for a long time, gave birth to the 4th dragon cow, a female calf. Liz personally named the 4 dragon cows, 3 female calves, Young Flower, Young Black, and Young Yellow, and the male calf, Strong. Inheriting the historical tradition of the dairy farm, the 5 stages of young, milk, small, big, old, strong, and strong corresponded to 5 different names, which was very eye-catching. He also instructed the serfs of the dairy farm. From now on, the dairy farm's cows are divided into 3 levels. The first level is the best, which are these 4 calves. You have to feed them with the best feed and the most meticulous care. The second level is the original 9 cows, which also have to be carefully taken care of. The lowest level is the newly purchased cows, which have to be treated normally. Yes, Sir Lord, your instructions are the goal of our work. The old steward of the dairy farm was very thin. He wanted a flatter list, but he was not good at it. He was very good at delivering calves, and all 4 calves were delivered by him. For this, List rewarded him with 4 silver coins in recognition of his contribution in delivering calves. 1 silver coin for each successful calf. So for the past week, he had been very happy. When leaving the dairy farm, List could already see the future pastures of dragon cows. At that time, all the milk in his diet would be replaced by dragon milk. Nutritious. Chapter 343. Taking potions, practicing fighting skills, practicing archery, practicing actual combat with Paris, training dogs, playing the piano, patrolling the territory, communicating with the sirens, teasing the mangrove sprite Nami, replying to the island aristocrats, and declining the invitation to the banquet, holding a dinner party, listening to flattery, consuming a lot of food, and watching Ella make trouble at the banquet, riding a horse, traveling by boat, traveling between Flower Town and Black Horse Island. Life in May was basically such a smooth start, but List did not feel monotonous. Although there was no TV, computer, or mobile phone, life here was full every day. From morning to night, as long as he wanted to do something, there would be a lot of things waiting for him. Just like now, hiding in the castle's flower garden, watering a single pot of snake blood fruit with the snake blood of a mid-level sea monster. After more than a week, there was still no magic feedback. It turned out that the first few times of cultivating snake blood, if it could not successfully breed a sprite worm, it would be useless in the future. He decided not to waste the snake blood anymore and focused on the smoke mission. After getting the dragon cow reward, the smoke mission began to be updated. However, this was not a simple mission, and it was quite difficult to complete. Mission: as an elite Earth Knight with a mid-level World of Warcraft pet, it can even hunt mid-level sea monsters. Except for the lack of followers, there is nothing that can stop you from going to the battlefield to gain merit. Please form a Earth Knight squad. Reward: a new variety of Black Nightshade. The reward was a new variety of Black Nightshade. This made List very excited. It was very likely that the reward would be the Black Nightshade magic potion. Now was the peak of his potions. Relying on flame mushrooms, fast-growing magic thorns, intercepted black tulip, and temporarily planted snow flame mushrooms in winter, he could barely meet his potion needs. But when there was a new magic potion, he would never complain too much. Therefore, it was necessary to form a night squad, and it had to be done as soon as possible. He didn't want to delay the new smoke mission. Now, there are 6 members, and we need to recruit 6 more members to form a 12-member night squad. As for me, I'm certainly not counted in the night squad. List knew very well that he, who had Dosen, was not suited to charge with the night. He was more suited to command from behind the scenes. He picked up the crystal teacup on the table, blew the tea leaves on the surface of the water, and took a sip leisurely. This was the new tea that had just been picked this month. The 3 green tea trees were much more productive than expected. After fertilizing them, they could pick new tea 2 or 3 times a month. This allowed List to drink more tea, digest the grease, and eat more World of Warcraft meat. In terms of luxury, he has definitely far surpassed Levis, who is backed by Tulip Castle. Levis at most eats the World of Warcraft fire rabbit meat raised by Tulip Castle every day, but he eats mid-level sea monsters. The Count, who has returned from a meeting in Blue Dragon Island and successfully made a name for himself with flower brew, wrote a letter of envy. The Count hoped to taste the snake stew. After thinking about it, List reluctantly cut off 5.5 kilograms of snake meat and sent it to the Tulip Castle. This 5 pounds of snake meat is probably enough for a meal at the Tulip Castle dinner. He put away his thoughts that always tended to wander off. He continued to pay attention to the formation of the night squad. At present, among his followers, there are already 6 Earth Knights. 2 elite Earth Knights, the Wind attribute Marcus Wheel, the Thunder attribute Charles Trapp. 4 ordinary Earth Knights, the Earth attribute Rondo Kettle, Rick Footprint, the Fire attribute Russell Steele, and the Thunder attribute Griffin Haystack. At present, there are 10 Earth Knights in collusion with Flower Town. I should select 6 outstanding ones from them as soon as possible. After List killed the snake, he became even more famous, and naturally, more Knight wanted to seek refuge with him. However, not everyone sought refuge with him. Morality, character, age, and identity were all criteria to be carefully measured. Putting down the teacup, List glanced around the apple table and asked, Consultant Gort, Teacher Marcus, Charles, Zambrata, which 6 of these 10 Earth Knights do you think should be recruited to form a Knight Squad? Gort and Marcus were his teachers and most trusted people. Charles was a veteran elite Earth Knight, and his marginal identity allowed him to provide better ideas. Zambrata was an aristocrat who had been deprived of his title, but he also had his own vision. List called them over to give him advice. Gort shook his wooden cup. The leaves of the green tea tree are indeed magical leaves. The first taste is very bitter, but the more you taste, the more mellow it becomes. Sir, I don't have an intuitive sense of the strength of the Earth Knight, so I can't give more advice, but Henry is not qualified. He has committed theft. Then let's eliminate Henry first, List decided. Henry was strong and brave, but he had committed theft, which was a stain on his record. Zorro and Paul are too old, and there is no need to train them. I suggest giving them up, Marcus said seriously. These 2 were over 40 years old, and were still ordinary Earth Knights. Even without Marcus's suggestion, List did not want to recruit them. You can exclude them. Charles drank a cup of good tea in one gulp. He was a little hesitant, but he still said, Sir, I have some selfish motives. Victor used to humiliate me, and I'm ashamed to be with him. This is just my personal grudge. If you still want to recruit Victor, I'll obey your arrangement. Victor was only 26 years old, and his strength was about to reach the elite Earth Knight level. List liked this person very much, but he did not expect him to have such a grudge against Charles. After thinking about it, he said, Then exclude Victor. Thank you, sir. Charles solemnly saluted. Next, Zambrata also gave his opinion. After a few rounds of discussion, dispute, compromise, and several rounds of conversation, the Knight candidates were officially determined. Water attribute Simon Pan, born a freedman, 28 years old, graduated from Knight Academy. Water attribute Norman Twine, born aristocrat, 23 years old, the second son of a Lord Knight, graduated from Knight Academy. Ice attribute Leslie Dead Leaves, born a freedman, 30 years old, graduated from Knight Academy. Earth attribute Eric Gonwood, born a freedman, 32 years old, graduated from Knight Academy. Fire attribute Daniel, born a serf on the outer island, no surname, 29 years old. His last follower was a Lord Knight, but he died on the battlefield. Wind attribute David Yellowteeth, born a freedman, 24 years old, graduated from Knight Academy. The Knight Academy established in Tulip Castle has basically trained most of the Earth Knights on Coral Island, including List, who have studied in Knight Academy. Teacher Marcus, when all the Knights are in place, I will announce the establishment of the Flower Town Knight Squad. You will be the first Knight Captain, responsible for the squad's charge training, and Charles will assist from the side. The 2 stood up, yes, sir. List continued to arrange. Advisor Gort and Zambrata cannot relax. Continue to keep in touch with the Knight who intends to go to Flower Town to ensure that there is an unqualified Knight in the Knight Squad. We can replace new members at any time. Chapter 344. Simon, Norman, Leslie, Eric, Daniel, and David came quickly. Since they had the opportunity to catch up with the rising momentum of the Flower Town, they had to take the initiative. They were either commoners or the second sons of aristocrats, and their rising channels were narrow. An opportunity like the one in the Flower Town might not come across many times in a lifetime. List received the 6 Earth Knights in the castle, but he was not too enthusiastic. Perhaps a month later, some of the 6 Earth Knights would leave the Flower Town. Following was a two-way process. A month of running in was enough to determine whether they should establish a follower relationship with each other. The next morning, on the night square, the red sun rose from the east, and the clouds dispersed in the west. List Tulip, Baron of the Flower Town, was dressed in fine steel armor, with a red blood sword at his waist and a fine steel shield in his hand. It was the first time he was dressed in such an eye-catching night attire. His handsome face was covered by the visor of his helmet. Only his sapphire pupils shone brightly through the mesh. A red cloak fluttered behind him. The black dragon was adorned with a silver-white horse armor. Black, white, and red were dazzling. The fine steel shield was engraved with a blooming black tulip, which was the symbol of the Flower Town and List. Black Dragon was also padded with a cotton cushion embroidered with black tulip. It was not so much a pursuit of riding comfort as a flaunt of the identity of a knight. Aristocrats liked these fancy things. It was indeed a bit of a hindrance to riding, but in the eyes of commoners, it was a symbol of nobility which could make people crazy. Riding Black Dragon, he slowly walked around the square. Through his visor, he sized up the knights, lined up one by one, observing their spirit. Everyone was dressed in fine steel armor, which was provided for them by the castle. The horses he sat on were also qualified war horses, but it was a pity that there were yellow, brown, gray, and flowery war horses. The colors were not uniform. Fortunately, the horses were draped in standard horse armor. Compared to Black Dragon, which only covered its forehead, their horses were tightly wrapped around their head, neck, shoulders, and buttocks. The cushion under their buttocks was also engraved with a black tulip symbol. Everyone held a shield in their left hand and a spear in their right. The sunlight shone on their armors, making them look especially majestic. Silence. Even the horses were silent. Only the sound of Black Dragon's hooves could be heard. After a while, List opened his mouth in a clear voice. I, List Tulip, Baron of the Flower Town, regard striving for glory as my life's mission. The road ahead is fraught with danger. I need a loyal companion, a brave knight. You, Earth Knight, stand here. Are you willing to charge with me? The knights shouted in unison. We are willing to charge for Lord Baron. Very well. List suddenly pulled out the red blood sword, pointed the tip of the sword straight to the sky, and said loudly, Then, I declare that the Flower Town Knight Squad is officially established today. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The 12 Earth Knight raised their spears and uttered words in response to List's declaration. In the open space on the periphery of the square, many of the youngsters who came to watch saw such a blood-boiling scene and couldn't help but shout, Whoa! Karl Hammerstein and Rome Winebarrel watched the youngsters from the sidelines. Today's scene would always make them remember the Flower Town's prosperity and prosperity. Although most of the youngsters would eventually go back to farm or work, but it might inspire a few youngsters to work hard and become a future knight. At least in the Flower Town, they had such an opportunity. After the Knight Squad's declaration was over, the first training charge began. The galloping horses in full armor almost crushed the earth when they charged. Their momentum was unparalleled, and their chi converged into a torrent that could tear everything apart. The knight charged into the distance, leaving behind only a cloud of dust. Karl walked up to Rome and said in a relaxed manner, Rome, I leave the patrol team to you. There are some thorns in the team, but I believe that you can handle them. Rome asked, When do we leave? Sir, we'll make arrangements soon. Karl smiled. A year ago, we were just ordinary retainer knight without even chi. We followed Sir to the Flower Town to spend the rest of our lives. Who could have thought that we would be in such a situation now? You and I have already become officials, and Odin and Gray are working very smoothly at the administrative office. Karl Hammerstein, Rome Winebarrel, Odin Insole, and Gray Sickle. List's first 4 retainer knight had very poor talent, with Odin and Gray not even cultivating chi. However, List was a nostalgic person and still arranged good jobs for them. Karl was the defense officer, Rome was the insect officer, Odin was the assistant to the administrative officer Isaiah, and Gray was the assistant to the financial officer Isaiah. But for now, they could not continue to work together in Flower Town. Taking advantage of the formation of the Night Squad, List made a new personnel appointment to Flower Town, dividing half of the officials to work in the port town of Black Horse Island. Carl will go to the port town and serve as the port town's defense officer and insect officer. Rome succeeded as the defense officer of Flower Town, and List's former friend Nemo served as the new insect officer of Flower Town. Most of the officials who followed would move to the port town with their families. Flower Town could no longer satisfy List's appetite. After the formation of the Night Squad, this year's development made him plan to participate. That is to say, the time to make contributions on the battlefield was not far away, and the title of Viscount was not far away. Sooner or later, Black Horse Island would surface. As long as the secrets of the black blood horses and rubber are not revealed, it is not surprising to open up a deserted island. I believe that the Count, Levis, and others already know of the existence of Black Horse Island. Instead of sneaking around, it is better to build boldly. Everyone knows that List is ambitious and has a great future. So, isn't it what he should do to open up a deserted island? With the flower brew to fund it and the thorn sprite to plant the potion, it may surprise the Count and Levis that he did not do so. After more than a year of development, no one can ignore his light anymore. He is an excellent tulip family bloodline like Levis, Lavera, and Lytton. His cowardice in the past was just dormancy, and now his genius is a basic operation. He watched the night training all morning. He did not come back in the afternoon. For him, the formation of the Night Squad in advance was more to complete the task. Training the Blizzard Beast is more important than training the Night. The Blizzard Beast Army is the main force in the future to compete for military merits, and the Night is just an auxiliary. After a nap, he came to the Black Nightshade field. He called out the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward the auxiliary potion Black Nightshade. In the green Black Nightshade field, some Black Nightshades are blooming, and some have already produced small black fruits. List released his magic eyes and observed the entire Black Nightshade field, and soon found that magic retroaction was not from the wormstalk, but not far from the wormstalk. It was a mutant Black Nightshade with small yellow flowers. Its fruit is not black, but blue-black of very special color, and most of the magic of the plant is condensed on the fruit. Indeed, as previously guessed, this is a potion. The Black Nightshade, which was thought to only be a snack to improve the taste, finally has great value. Chapter 345. List understood potions very well. However, with the additional meaning of auxiliary, he felt that it was a bit awesome. Literally, auxiliary means to help. In other words, it can be made into a potion that can help digest magic power, or can it assist the growth of other potions? Or does it mean to mix it with other magic ingredients to create a magic potion that will have better effects? There was no way to deduce this. List could only wait. He was going to use the seeds to cultivate more new varieties of the auxiliary potion Black Nightshade, which would take some time. Despite the Black Nightshade bug's blessing, it would still take 2 or 3 months to see results. List held back his curiosity about the auxiliary potions. He browsed through the new mission. Quest. Siren Agiloid's Truth has found a magical coral reef. When the tide rises, it will be submerged. When the tide falls, it will reveal a circular reef. There are many giant clams living in it. There are a lot of black pearls and shells. Why not collect a batch? Reward, a magic equipment. Oh, this mission made List's eyes light up. Achi had found a coral reef with giant clams that could produce black pearls living on it. It quickly reminded him of the giant clam he had fished up at the beach last year. Although it was not a sea monster, yet it could produce black pearls with magical power. He thought that it was a giant clam that lived at the bottom of the sea and accidentally washed ashore. He did not expect that it was actually living on the coral reef near the flower town. Without a doubt, this giant clam could be developed into an industry, the black pearl industry. The Sapphire family had a tranquil lake on the Blue Dragon Island, where low-level sea monster pearl oysters were raised. Every year, it could produce a large number of white pearls, which were precious ornaments that noble women fought over. They had a certain calming effect. The black pearls had a better effect and were bigger, easily replacing the white pearls. He soon arrived at the seascape villa. He blew the horn and called a Chi, who was swimming in the sea. "Brother." A Chi came out of the shell with a mangrove sprite Nami sitting on his shoulder. The sprite had become a Chi's undersea companion and was no longer a stranger to List. "A Chi, did you find a coral reef?" "Brother, do you already know?" "A Chi found the coral reef yesterday. When the tide is low, it can emerge from the water like a large circular lake. There are a lot of shells living inside, which are different from a Chi's shells. It's a bit like the giant clam shell at the entrance of my brother's castle." After listening, Liz said, "A Chi, these are giant clams. They can produce black pearls. It's the black pearl I gave you before. It's a very expensive material for magic equipment. It can be developed into a black pearl industry. I want you to find out the exact location of the coral reef and determine its distance." "We will fish out a batch of large giant clams." "As you wish." Captain Costo immediately dived into the water to look for the large giant clams. The coral reefs above the water did not look too big. Looking from one side to the other side of the lagoon, it felt like there was a distance of 5 to 6 kilometers. The lagoon was approximately oval in shape, with an area of about 20 to 30 square kilometers. It was a bit smaller than the flower town. It was easy to find giant clams, but it was not easy to find large ones. After diving for a long time, the sailors had only found 2 large giant clams with a diameter of more than 1 meter. They were hauled up with ropes and nets. The sky was about to turn dark. This should be considered as the completion of the task of collecting a batch of black pearls, right? Liz summoned the smoke mission and found that the contents of the mission had not changed. Not knowing whether it was because the black pearls were still in the giant clam shell or because the number of black pearls collected was not enough, he had the sailors drag the previously discovered smaller giant clams aboard the ship. Only then did they announce their return. After returning to the castle, the first thing they did was to open the giant clam's shell. Unfortunately, there were only 5 fist-sized black pearls in the 2 large giant clam's shell. There were only some fragmented small black pearls in the smaller giant clam's shell, not even the size of a ping-pong ball. It seems that my dream of relying on black pearls to make the sea-calming bead and arming the fleet will have to be put on hold for the time being. I was really lucky to be able to find 3 black pearls suitable for making the sea-calming bead. List sorted out his mood. He summoned the smoke mission again. This time, the smoke serpentines finally changed. Chapter 346. Soul Storage Jar? It sounds like a very mysterious item, a jar that stores souls. It feels like something made by an evil wizard. Liz pondered. There was nothing about the soul that was not evil. During the previous battle on the Spectre ship, the soul sinking wood obtained from Kurdish truth was tainted with the resentment of countless people. After all, the soul sinking wood was made by sacrificing an entire ship's worth of people. The soul disruptor obtained from Ilisai truth was also extracted from the blood of the dead. The wizard's triangular theory of magic, matter, and spirit would itself prompt them to explore the spiritual realm, the soul. List also wanted to know the meaning of the soul, but he wanted to live a comfortable life more. At this moment, he was thinking about how the soul storage jar would appear in front of him. At present, there are 2 wizards in the town. Elksun is making the potion, and Glanny was also invited by me to redesign the new calm pearl for the upcoming thorns. So he guessed. The soul storage jar could either be obtained from Elksun or Glanny. As for how to obtain it, it was not clear. But if neither of them took the initiative to hand it over, he would ask carefully and not let his reward fall into the hands of others. While thinking, The smoke serpentines had changed. Mission: the wheat settlement's wheat leaves have withered and turned yellow near the wheat sprite worm's worm stalk. The farmers tried their best to water the compost, but it still did not work. A batch of wheat seedlings were even burned to death. As the Lord, you should solve the problem. Reward: a sprite worm. After reading the mission, List understood that a new wheat sprite worm was about to be born in the wheat settlement. Sure enough, when spring came, everything sprouted, and the Flower Town sprite worms were constantly being bred. The withered and yellow wheat leaves must be caused by the large amount of nutrients needed during the breeding of the sprite worm. However, the farmers have been desperately fertilizing, but they still could not stop the wheat leaves from continuing to wither and turn yellow. Why is this happening? With a little inspiration in his mind, he had a new guess and quickly went to the worm room on the second floor. In the big box for the sprites to live in, Ella occupied the center position, and a dozen sprite worms surrounded it, crawling meaninglessly. Occasionally, they would lick the jade powder. Life was very pleasant. However, there was a disharmonious sprite worm among them, the wheat sprite worm. It seemed rather impatient at the moment. Through the contract that connected their minds, List could feel its inner world. Although it wasn't clear, it was sufficiently expressed. Because it was affected by something, it became restless and even felt a faint sense of hostility. "Little guy, come here." He stretched out his hand and let the wheat worm climb up. At this time, Ella, who was sleeping, suddenly woke up. She grabbed the wheat worm from List's hand and put it back in a box. Wow, it had no special meaning, just a prank. Then it received List's vicious finger-flicking Goddard. It covered its head and shrank into a corner, feeling wronged. Wah, you better behave yourself. I'm going to treat your skin properly. List picked up the wheat worm again and threw down some harsh words. Wow, Ella protested. It didn't think it was very naughty. List pointed at it. Watch your skin. Wow. In the midst of Ella's protest, List left the worm house and rushed to the wheat settlement. When he arrived, he happened to see Xianxia in the farmland, discussing something with the serfs. After the greeting, List already knew that they must be dealing with the withered wheat seedlings, but he still couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" Xianxia hurriedly replied, "Sir, there is something wrong with the wheat seedlings in the wheat settlement, especially the wheat seedlings near the worm stalk. The leaves are gradually withering and turning yellow. It happened in the past 2 days. At first, I thought there was a problem with the worm stalk, but the worm stalk is still healthy. I also asked Mr. Carter, and he told me that the wheat sprite worm is healthy. He wondered if there was a lack of nutrition, and even if it was breeding a sprite worm. However, fertilization was useless, which made him very puzzled. If I can't solve it, I'm going to ask Sir for advice. In the face of this situation, I really can't do anything." The abnormal situation in Flower Town's agriculture was originally reported directly to the castle, because every anomaly could be related to the breeding of a sprite worm. However, after many false positives, List canceled the procedure. Anomalies in farming were too common, and the vast majority of them had nothing to do with sprite worms. So much so that apart from the sprite worms reminded by the smoke mission, there was no additional harvest. I understand. List did not blame Xianxia. Without the help of the smoke mission, he was not necessarily better than Xianxia and the others in managing the town, especially in the face of this special situation. I think a new wheat sprite worm was born here. However, the location of its birth is a bit conflicting near the wheat worm stalk. Therefore, the two wheat sprites are competing, causing the surrounding wheat to wither and turn yellow. Although there was little friction between the sprites, it did not mean that the sprites were friendly to each other. Ella's slap to Nami was proof of this. The existing wheat sprite worm and the upcoming wheat sprite worm obviously did not have friendly thoughts with each other, which led to the current anomaly. The solution adopted by List was very simple. "Little guy, put away your worm stalk." The anxious wheat sprite worm could not resist List's thoughts. Soon, it aimed at its worm stalk and spat out a mouthful of magic power. Then, The worm stalk grew at a speed visible to the naked eye and quickly turned into a wheat seed, which was then swallowed by the wheat sprite worm. I will remove the wheat worm stalk. You should carefully manage the wheat field. Fertilize less if there is excess nutrition. Fertilize more if there is insufficient nutrition. Pay attention to watering and weeding. Don't let my second wheat sprite worm die prematurely. Sir, please rest assured. I will personally supervise the serfs to take care of the wheat field. The sprite worm's worm stalk could at most affect more than 100 mu of land. Therefore, List chose a better location in another wheat field and let the wheat sprite worm spit out its worm stalk again. The seed fell to the ground. Once again, it grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it became green and produced ears of wheat. The ears of wheat were cyan and would remain in a half-ripe state. The mystical worm stalk was never an ordinary plant. It was more like the embodiment of magic power. After moving its worm stalk, the wheat sprite worm felt a sense of exhaustion. The worm stalk was not suitable for moving often, because each time the sprite worm cast a spell, it would greatly damage its vitality. Fortunately, the jade powder could make up for this damage. After a while, it would be full of energy again. Chapter 347. The probability of a sprite evolving into a lesser sprite was very low. Out of 10 or 20 sprite worms, only 2 or 3 may evolve, and there was a high chance that the evolution would fail. As for whether the evolution probability had anything to do with transplanting the worm stalk, List was not clear. There was no evidence that the two were related. When Ella was still a thorn worm, its worm stalk was planted in Tulip Castle. After migrating to Flower Town, it began to evolve and succeeded. Although there was the help of the smoke mission, it at least showed that the worm stalk could still evolve and succeed after the migration. Perhaps, for sprite worms, the migrating sprite grass is like rubber worm triplets? Liz suddenly thought. The power of the triplets should be regarded as a kind of magic, which would not affect the evolution of the rubber worms. Otherwise, the smoke mission would dig out their ability, which would be a trap for List. This was not in line with the usual style of the smoke mission. The triplets will recover after resting for a while after using the power of the triplets. The sprite will also recover after resting for a while. Perhaps for the sprite worm, this is like a magician releasing magic, which will certainly consume a little strength, but can be exercised more. By constantly releasing the power of the triplets and constantly migrating the worm stalk, the sprite worm's magic mastery, List felt that this guess was not very reliable. The power of the triplets could also be explained by exercise and strengthening. How could the migration of the worm stalk not be regarded as exercise? What kind of sprite worm would pull up its worm stalk? As a plant, shouldn't it be planted in the field and grow steadily? The root of the sprite worm is the worm stalk. Migrating the worm stalk should be regarded as hurting the foundation. The power of the triplets should not be. List could only judge this way. At least the triplets were in good condition. There was no negative effect of using the power of the triplets at all. List waved his hand. The smoke mission emerged. It was still the original mission. It was not completed because of the worm stalk migration. It is probably because the wheat field has not been completely repaired, so the mission is not complete. Let's wait for 2 days and see if this is the case. After solving the conflict with the wheat worm, List mainly stared at Elksun and Glanny. The two magicians showed no signs of turning in the soul storage jar. One was peacefully making potions and making witty remarks at the banquet, while the other was immersed in making the sea-calming divine pearl and was not even willing to take a bath. Their apprentices were also working obediently, and there was nothing unusual. There was no news about the jar from other channels either. This made List a little depressed. Watching the two sorcerers eating and drinking, he was not very happy. It seems that if I don't force them, they won't hand over the storage jar of souls. Just as he was thinking about how to force the two to hand over the soul storage jar. However, something unexpected happened the next day. The insect protection team came to report that the horns sounded at the seaside, This was the signal for communication between him and the siren Qi. He had told the insect protection team that was guarding the fragrant coconut tree worm stalk to report to him as soon as they heard the horn. Therefore, he knew that a Qi was looking for him. If there was nothing important, a Qi would not blow the horn. She liked to stay in her room and read and study magic. After arriving at the Sea View Villa, a Qi said in a panic, "Brother, a Qi picked up an unconscious human being on the sea, and I don't know what to do with her." Following the direction of a Qi's finger, Liz saw a pale woman lying on the bed in the wooden house on the second floor. She looked like a dead person, and her wet clothes were obviously a magic cloak. This was the standard dress of sorcerer. This unconscious woman was a sorcerer. Then, he saw a pot that looked like a teapot on the bedside table. Soul storage jar? List's inspiration burst in an instant. His previous guess was wrong. I'm afraid that Elkson and Glanny have nothing to do with the soul storage jar. The clue of destiny guidance appeared on the unconscious sorcerer in front of him. A Qi, what's the matter with this teapot? It was hidden in her clothes. It was in the way, so a Qi took it out and put it on the table. A Qi was nervous. Brother, is she dead? He checked his breathing. It was very stable. She's not dead yet. List touched his chin, thinking that the sorcerer should not be in a coma caused by drowning, because drowning people should not be breathing so normally. He then reached out and touched the position of the sorcerer's heart. The heartbeat was also steady. It seems that she didn't drown, but simply fell into a coma. There are no doctors in the town, only a few old people who can decoct herbs. I'll ask them to come over, and Teacher Marcus should also know a little about how to save people. Liz said to a Qi, "You go away first." Okay. A Qi returned to the shell and swam back to the sea. List asked the retainer knight to ask for help immediately, and he continued to stay by the sorcerer's side. Looking at the unconscious sorcerer, he was helpless. He didn't know how to save people. He only knew the theory of artificial respiration, and the key was that the other party didn't seem to need artificial respiration. After all, she was breathing. So he directly picked up the teapot on the cabinet and studied it. It should be a copper teapot, but it was obvious that it was not used to hold tea. There was no such thing as a teapot in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, because only Liszt had real tea. Other people just drank milk tea made from the fruit of the black tea tree in a cup and did not need a teapot. It looks a bit like Aladdin's magic lamp in the Arabian Nights. Touching the copper teapot, Liszt couldn't help but wipe the teapot. He was looking forward to the sudden emergence of a genie made of blue smoke, fulfilling his 3 wishes. However, it didn't. He shook the teapot. There was nothing in it, and there was no teapot lid. It was a hole. Probably only the mouth of the teapot was the mouth of the pot. So, is it a soul storage pot? After casting magic eyes, there were no traces of magic power on it. It looked just like an ordinary tea set. A teapot carried by a sorcerer was definitely not an ordinary item. But Liszt had no clue. He put down the teapot and carefully looked at the unconscious sorcerer. Her pale face made her look like a dead person. Her appearance was ordinary, and there were some freckles on her face. Her hair was brown, and she was about 165 meters tall. She was neither fat nor thin. There was no one around, so he didn't have to worry about anything. He directly searched the sorcerer's clothes with his hand, looking for anything else that could prove the other person's identity. In the end, he only felt a pendant on her neck. The pendant was pendant with a silver coin, not a silver coin that could be bought or sold, but a silver round metal coin. It was very light and felt a bit like mithril. The front was engraved with a triangular pattern with an eye in the middle. This was the symbol of a sorcerer, the Eye of Truth. Below the triangle of the Eye of Truth, there were several wavy curves, which probably represented water. On the back was a line of small serpentines. May the voyage of truth be accompanied by the sea of knowledge, Chrissy Truth. Chapter 348. So, is she called Chrissy Truth? Or is the person who gave this silver coin called Chrissy Truth? Liszt thought as he played with the silver coin. Starting with the word wish represented the wishes of a friend, indicating that the silver coin was given to her by someone else. Then, there were two explanations for Chrissy Truth. One was the unconscious wizard's real name, and the other was the name of her friend. However, when a friend gave their blessings and left their name, it was usually followed by a symbol. There was no symbol on the silver coin. This line of serpentines was written on the back of the silver coin in the form of 3 lines of serpentines. Therefore, there was no need for symbols, and there was no way to determine whose name it was. Of course, the above was just a momentary change in Liz's thoughts. It did not matter what the other party's name was. The silver coin could not solve any identity problems. For the time being, your name is Chrissy. Liz stuffed the pendant back into the other party's neck. However, he had no intention of putting the copper kettle back. According to the prevailing laws of the lords, items that drifted ashore at sea belonged to the local lord. Because the lord owned everything on the land, even the wizard Chrissy, she could be classified as an enemy trespassing on the territory, and the lord had the right to arrest her. However, the Flower Town, like most of the lord's territories, was open to the public. As long as one did not come with malice, they would not be casually questioned. This copper kettle could be regarded as a reward for saving a life. He was a reasonable lord who abided by the rules. Sir, Marcus had already arrived, along with several elderly people. List pointed to the bed. There's an unconscious wizard floating by the sea. Teacher Marcus, see if you can wake her up. The rest of you, see if there are any herbal prescriptions that can treat an unconscious person. Marcus observed for a while and shook his head. Sir, I can't see what's wrong with her. She does not look like a drowning person. Several elderly people could not see the problem either. They could only use some simple herbs to treat common minor illnesses. In this world full of magic power, a knight with chi could constantly recuperate and improve their physique. Therefore, it was very difficult for them to fall sick. Therefore, medicine was very underdeveloped. Once the commoners fell seriously ill, they were basically waiting for death. There was no possibility of treatment. List had the idea of developing medicine, but he had no idea where to start. For the commoners, instead of spending the exorbitant medical fees to treat illnesses, it was more practical to cultivate Do Qi. After all, as long as one ate well and practiced diligently, they would be able to cultivate battle Qi. However, there was no such high probability of curing an illness. An old man said with a trembling voice, My lord, this mage lady may be too weak. She will wake up naturally when her body recovers. It's possible. List nodded and said to the manservant, Thomas, give each of the elderly a copper coin as compensation for their delay in work. It was only right for a few people who were about to be buried to make a trip here and give them some compensation. Yes, master. Ah, thank you, my lord. The elderly people happily took the copper coins and left. List was still discussing with Marcus. There's a mage floating on the beach. Teacher Marcus, what do you think? Mages are very weak. Compared to us knights, they are no different from ordinary commoners. Therefore, I don't think she could have been soaked in the sea for too long. Furthermore, there is no sign of her drowning. I suspect that she may be a mage from Coral Island, or a mage brought by a passing ship. Liz said, Although I don't know how many mages there are on Coral Island, but from the exposed mages, none of them match her physical characteristics. She looks relatively young, probably no more than 25 years old. It is impossible for there to be such a young mage on the island. Maybe she is a magic apprentice? Magic apprentice? Liz thought for a moment. There is also this possibility. So why did she fall into the sea, and how did she float here smoothly? According to a chi, she was picked up on the sea. At that time, she was floating on the sea with her clothes. This was somewhat against the laws of physics. The aquamarine sea was not the Dead Sea. It could not float people. I can't explain it, but I think she must be watched more closely. Mages are dangerous people. Marcus said seriously. He didn't like mages. He never had a good face for Elksun and Glanny. Not to mention a mage of unknown origin. After thinking for a moment, List decided to move her to a residential area, find a house, arrange for someone to take care of her, and let the patrols keep a close watch on her. Once she wakes up, they should inform him immediately. Then he called a Chi with a horn. I have taken the unconscious mage to the town to take care of her. A Chi. Human mages are dangerous. They have an impulsive curiosity about unknown creatures. You'd better not come into contact with mages before you reach adulthood. Well, a Chi understands. The little siren was a little depressed. It's a pity that a Chi's feet can't grow out. I can't live with my brother and live like a human. There will be such a day. List rubbed her hair. Suddenly, he had a burst of inspiration. He let a Chi sit on a chair, then took out a roll of tape measure and measured the length of a Chi's legs. According to your description, when you were born, there was seawater below your knees. 41 years later, there is only seawater below your ankles. If we assume that your growth rate remains stable, we can measure how many years it will take for you to reach adulthood by the proportion of your legs. Ah, is that okay, brother? Achi suddenly had little stars in her eyes. She didn't know if she was happy because she was going to know when she would reach adulthood or because of Liz's profound knowledge. Liz smiled and lifted Achi's calf. He put one end of the tape measure on her knee and stretched it to her ankle. It was measured to be 41 centimeters. According to the general proportion of the human body, I estimate that the length of your feet is about 12 centimeters, so we can get a binary linear equation. Well, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Basically, you will grow 1 centimeter a year. 41 centimeters. 41 centimeters. The remaining length of her feet was about 12 centimeters, which meant that Achi still had 12 years before she reached adulthood. Achi's little face immediately fell. Brother, is it 12 years before I reach adulthood? List was also depressed. Basically, if nothing goes wrong and the inference is correct, the speed of your long feet will not exceed the speed of your long legs. So, it will indeed take 12 years for you to reach adulthood. Of course, if your feet are small, maybe 10 years or less. Achi was at most 55 meters tall, and her feet wouldn't be very big. Maybe they would be 3-inch golden lotuses. You're tuning into the Eternal Immortal Ballad YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.